Supervisor Jones,
Present.
Supervisor Shuby,
Here.
Supervisor White, Mayor Baglaw. A quorum is present.
Port Road Church of Christ, will you please lead us, or invocation, please?
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for a beautiful morning. But even amidst all the beauty, sometimes life just gets tiring and stressful and difficult. And sometimes we just don't get much excitement even out of our work anymore. I would pray today, Father, that the beauty of this day will recharge us and encourage us. Help us to see our work, Lord, as a calling. Be filled with the privilege to serve this wonderful community. We thank you, we praise you, and we give you glory this day as you refresh us and renew us. We pray in your precious and holy name. Amen.
Amen. And Mr. Henderson, would you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move on to public comment. We did receive some public comment that has been handed out to each of you concerning the Frontier Motel. So I'm going to put that on the record. And we've received other public comment from the tennis enthusiasts in town. We've gotten that public comment. I think we also had one on the right-of-way discussion, so want to enter that. Do we have any on the line for public comment?
Yes. Caller, when you hear the two beeps, it's your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record.
Good morning to the board and to the public. My name is Brenda Hunt, and on behalf of my husband, John Paul Kyle, and my 14-year-old son, Ryder Kyle, I'm providing public comment on item 17C, specifically the budget line item for the reconstruction of 4 tennis courts at Centennial Park. There should be approximately or over 40 letters of support for this item sent in via public comments email. As shown in the pictures in some of these letters, the needs of actually all 8 courts is dire. The funding request is critical to fully fund, as once funded, Carson City Parks and Rec and Open Space is planning to leverage these dollars to essentially double them so all 8 courts can be reconstructed. Once this reinvestment in the facility is approved, support from other grants and or private bodies will be easier to obtain for other improvements, such as hitting backboard and for benches and things like that. My family and all those who wrote in support of this effort have been waiting a long time and are super excited to have playable surfaces to host camps and tournaments in the near future. As the mother of a 14-year-old traveling tennis player, having safe, playable local courts will be amazing. Although my son is in school today, if he could, he would passionately thank you for voting to fully fund this request and to approve any future request to virtually double these dollars through a grant from the Land and Water Conservation Fund, the USDA, and or private foundation. Thank you for your consideration, and we look forward to hearing item 17C later today.
Thank you, Ms. Hunt. Is there any further public comment?
Yes. Caller, when you hear the two beeps, it's your turn for public comment.
Hi, good morning. My name is Chris Lashley, resident of Carson City. This is going to be short and sweet. Good morning to everyone. Hope you're having a good day. My concern is about the mask mandates and when the state of Nevada is going to be reopened to have business as usual. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have further public comment?
Yes. Caller, when you hear the two beeps, it's your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record.
Jane Gangitano. Good morning. I also am calling regarding the reopening of our county and business as usual. Look at Texas. Their COVID cases keep going down. Even Dr. Fauci can't figure it out. And I think everyone is just really tired of it. Tons of the vulnerable population has already been vaccinated. I think we're good to go. And I really would like to see the mask mandate gone and businesses open as usual.
Thank you, Jane. Do I have more comments?
Yes. Caller, when you hear the two beeps, it's your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record.
Melissa Fraker. I'm calling in on the Northern Western Asphalt Company. Would like to know what is going to happen with this, and hopefully it'll be finalized. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. The next caller.
Caller, when you hear the two beeps, it's your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, good morning. This is Karen Stevens. I'm calling regarding opening our economy. This used to be a wonderful place to live, and I've lived here since 1994. And now I'm looking for another state to move to because this has just gotten ridiculous. I'm tired of the mask mandates, tired of social distancing, tired of all the crap, basically, excuse my language. But this is a horrible place to live now. People shouldn't have to move to another state to have their constitutional rights to live free, breathe free, and go about their business without intervention from the government. So open up our economy, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Do I have another caller?
Yes. Caller, when you hear the two beeps, it's your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Laura Hale. My primary reason for calling this morning is item 17C on resurfacing the courts at Centennial. So I am in total accord with Ms. Hunt, who spoke earlier, but just hearing the several comments from the last few speakers about not wanting mask mandates. I mean, we see that the numbers of infections are on the rise again. And wearing a mask is a pretty simple thing to do. And if people want their freedom to, or their right to breathe, they can always go outside their house. And when they're not around other people, the concern is when they're with other people in an inside area, they need to wear a mask until we get total control of the pandemic. So thank you, Carson City, for supporting courts at Centennial Park, and thank you for supporting mask requirements. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Hale. Next caller.
Caller, when you hear the two beeps, it's your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record.
Judy and Bob Lucas. We're in Mound House, and I'm calling about Tahoe Western Asphalt. This is the 5th year we're going into trying to stop him. It goes from the Planning Commission to the Board of Supervisors, to the Board of Planning Committee, back to the Board of Supervisors. For 5 years, we have put up with the smell. We have put up with the fire that he's had up there. Thank God they put that out, the fire department. The smell is unbelievable. NDEP, I don't know if you know this, but NDEP closed him down in August of last year. And we just spoke to Nathan again, and he said they will stand by that. So I don't understand why he keeps hiring different attorneys. For one thing, this one is in California. I guess he's used up all the ones around here. But we need to have him closed down. I would like to see the person who let him start a business here and the inspector that didn't even know we were just a few hundred yards from him. They need to be fired. because apparently they don't know what they're doing. It's the smell. We can't have people over. Anywhere from 4:30 in the morning to 12:30 at night, he cooks. He lies to you people about when he cooks. Please shut him down. Now, my husband would like to speak to you.
I Hope, can you hear us?
Yes?
Oh, good. No, the thing is, every time his name comes up, Hope, we shouldn't have to defend ourselves. The Planning Commission didn't take his special use permit away on unfounded charges. You people are smarter than that. So please, you breathe clean air in your neighborhood, and I'm hearing all these comments about the mask mandate and you got to go outside to breathe clean air. Well, as you know, Hope, we can't go outside and breathe clean air when he's operating. Now, you've got a petition of over 70 people that that have complained about this. It's time to stop. You breathe clean air in your neighborhood. We have the right to breathe clean air in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Lucas. Do I have another caller?
Yes, caller, when you hear the two beeps, it's your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record.
Yes, Janice Wiley of the Highlands area in Mound House. I too have a complaint with TWA, and as everyone has stated, the odors are terrible when he is cooking. You can't, and especially in the summertime, you have a swamp cooler on your roof, and the fumes are coming in your direction in our neighborhood. It does pull into your home, so you can't enjoy the inside. You can't enjoy the outside. It has to stop. I'd like to hang my laundry and use the wind that God gave us to dry my clothes to save on money and energy. But you can't do it because your clothing smells. So his usage permit needs to be taken away. He needs no more asphalt. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miss Wiley. Is there another caller?
Yes, caller, when you hear the two beeps, it's your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Eldon Wilson. I'm a retired United States Professional Tennis Association coach as well as teacher. I definitely support the budget proposal in item 17C for the reconstruction of 4 tennis courts at Centennial Park. I moved into the area about 5 years ago, and it's exciting to see that Carson City has the opportunity to once again have a premier tennis facility that can not only generate revenue, but also give opportunities to those in the community to enjoy a great sport. The dollars that will be invested can also be leveraged to obtain other grants, so all 8 courts can possibly be repaired at Centennial. Along with that, we get support from other groups like the Sierra Junior Tennis Association out of Reno and the United States Tennis Association. These entities will help support youth and adult tennis in our community. As you can see by the letters of support, there's an interest from the local players and from others who continue to move into this wonderful area. Having this facility as a fully operational resource brings Carson City one step closer to a recreational mecca. I urge the board to vote to fully fund this line item in the capital budget proposal by Parks and Rec for Centennial Court reconstruction. And thanks again for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Is there further public comment?
I believe there's one more public comment, Madam Chair,
Thank you.
or Madam Mayor, sorry. Caller, when you hear the two beeps, it's your turn for public comment. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is John Tarl. I live near the Capitol. I've lived in Carson City since January. I'd like to complain about the aircraft noise from the airport. The Capitol building is just 3 miles from the airport. Although it continues to experience low-flying aircraft from the airport, pilots are taking off and using the airspace over the city to climb out to their 1,000 feet required altitude. And in my opinion, 1,000 feet is too low, since it is a scenic draw, and that could be considered a scenic area, and the altitude could be raised to 3,000 feet. I believe there should be some regulation to direct the arriving and departing aircraft away from the downtown area into a sparsely populated area, possibly east of the city. And I've worked with the interim airport manager, Tim, to identify the low-flying pilots, but he can only do case-by-case basis. And I think it's more of a widespread problem that needs regulation. Thank you.
John, what was your last name, please?
It's Tarl, T as in Tango, A-R-L-E.
Thank you so much. Okay, do I have any further public comment?
There's no further public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we're going to move on to agenda item number 6, which is the approval of minutes. We have two sets, March 4th, 2021 and March 18th, 2021. Do I have corrections or any further corrections for March 4th? Not? Or the 18th? If not, you can do a combined motion.
I move to approve the minutes for 4 March 2021 and March 18, 2021.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the March 4th and March 18th minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. We're going to move on to our consent agenda. I'm going to pull item 8C for individual discussion on the consent agenda. Is there any member that would like any other item pulled? If not, I will take a motion on the consent agenda with the exception of 8C.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented with the exception of item 8C.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 8C. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. We'll now take up item 8C. Ms. Schutte, do you have a disclosure?
Yes, I do. Thank you. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. In my private commitment, I serve as an unpaid board member for the Ron Wood Family Resource Center, which is a private nonprofit organization. Ron Wood is included for funding in the proposed resolution under this item. In my private commitment, I have fiduciary duties as a board member. Although the recommended funding amounts under this item were previously submitted by the application review work group without my involvement and already approved by this board at a different meeting, and therefore this item is more of a routine procedural matter, my vote on the passage or non-passage of the resolution may affect the acceptance, denial, or modification of the funding involved. Because the judgment of a reasonable person in my position would be materially affected by my relationship, I will not be voting in this matter.
Thank you. Do I have a disclosure for Ms. Supervisor Giomi?
You do. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. In my private commitment, I serve as an unpaid board member of RSVP and Advocates to End Domestic Violence, both of which are private nonprofit organizations. Both organizations are included for funding in the proposed resolution under this item. In those private commitments, I have fiduciary duties as a board member. Although the recommended funding amounts under this item were previously submitted by the application review work group without my involvement and already approved by this board at a different meeting, again without my involvement, and therefore this item is more of a routine procedural matter, my vote on the passage or non-passage of the resolution may affect the acceptance, denial or modification of the funding involved. Because the judgment of a reasonable person in my position would be materially affected by my relationships, I will not be voting on this matter.
Okay, thank you. So that leaves 3 of us to look at this. We have, as previously stated, already approved and done the applications, and this is the formal resolution that is required to fund these programs. If there are no questions, Mr. White, would you like to make the motion?
I would, thank you. I move to adopt resolution number 2021-R-7.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2021-R-7. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those with a no say no, and then 2 abstentions will be recorded. So that's 3 yeses, 0 nos, and 2 abstentions. Thank you. Looking out into the crowd today and seeing probably something of importance to many, unless the board objects, I'm trying to find my item number, I think we would like to move the 16 Frontier motel discussion forward. Is Ms. Paulson, is the sheriff's office going to be testifying on 16A?
I'm not sure, but I could try to contact the sheriff.
Because who's going to take us through this item? Because I'd like to bring it forward so that the people that are listening and things can get back to.
Lee Plemmel or Hope Sullivan.
So I'm going to take it as the next item so that you can bring people. So we'll move on until we can get some staff here. Let me get past consent. So we'll go on to item 13A, and then we will hear the Frontier Motel. So item 13A is our discussion and directives on all of our staff functions and everything dealing with the pandemic. Are you taking it first, Nikki? Thank you.
Good morning. For the record, Nikki Aker, Director of Carson City Health and Human Services. I'll go ahead and give you my normal stats that I've been providing. So this is through March 28th to April 10th. And through that period, there were 119 confirmed cases in Carson City. This represents 44% of all the Quad County cases. This is a 13% increase over the last two-week period. The daily cases reported over this 2-week period were 9. We have determined that 58% were exposed in the community and 31% were exposed to someone in the household. So those still are your 2 primary places that COVID is being transmitted. According to the Nevada State Public Health Lab, many of you have heard about the B117, which is the United Kingdom variant, and that is the most prevalent variant among all the samples that are sequenced in Nevada. And I'll just note that the Nevada State Public Health Lab is the only lab that's doing the sequencing at this point. So, and then through the Quad County region, we have seen 7 of those variant cases. And then I'm just going to add, as many of you listened to the governor's press conference and now know the plan moving forward, I do urge the public to continue wearing masks. That still will be a mandate, and to follow CDC's social distancing recommendations. And we are researching some different items on that, and we'll provide that to the public as we get that research completed. And I strongly urge individuals to get vaccinated against COVID-19. Carson City Health and Human Services conducts a vaccination event weekly within our community and also weekly in Douglas, Lyon, and Story counties. Anybody within the Quad County can go to any of those events. And we also have a variety of healthcare providers in the community that are providing vaccination, including our own FQHC, or the Federally Qualified Health Center, which is Nevada Health Center here in town. We have various pharmacies and some other partnerships, such as Immunize Nevada, that's assisting the Carson City Senior Center with an event to vaccinate those that were on their list. Carson City Health and Human Services will be working with Immunize Nevada's marketing campaign, 3 Million Reasons, and we'll be developing that message to spread locally, so it will speak to our community specifically. The state of Nevada's Business and Industry, or OSHA, is transitioning from regulatory to providing companies assisting with any questions they may have or helping to develop any measures to keep employees safe, which includes safe from COVID transmission. So with that, if anybody has questions, I'll entertain your questions.
Supervisor Jones?
So where are we on immunizations now? What percentage, as Carson, can you tell me?
I don't have that total. I think there's some stats from the state, and we have not vetted that information yet. So more to come on that.
Do you have any other questions? No? Okay. Ms. Paulson, thank you. Thank you. Again, thank your staff. I know we do it each time, but it's a long road, so please thank them. Ms. Paulson?
Morning. Sorry, we presented the city's proposed mitigation and enforcement plan yesterday to the state COVID task force, and you have received a copy of that as your late material. The plan incorporated the revisions that we received based on direction from the board at the April 1st meeting. The task force commended the city on having a comprehensive and thoughtful plan, also gave kudos to the health department for their great job during the pandemic. The governor did announce this week that Directive 21, which addresses social distancing, would be lifted May 1st, and that the decisions on social distancing will transition to the local authority. However, they recommend that we continue to follow the CDC guidelines. The state mandate for masks will remain in place, and the governor hopes to completely reopen by June 1st. We haven't received they haven't put out any of the directives from his press conference this week, so we don't have any specific information as far as the changes that will come about on May 1st. So this item is if the board would like to approve the city's transition plan.
Do you have any questions of the members of the board? Everybody's comfortable with what we've done. I just want to comment on one item that once we had originally planned the second meeting in May, we would come back to revisit for the June 1. When we receive all of the governor's guidance and directives, we may choose to bring that back the first meeting in May instead of the second meeting, just so that if there's items we need to address from the new directives, we'll be able to do that. But for now, if I recall, my understanding is we need a formal vote on this particular plan. He has not changed that rule.
That's correct.
Okay. Sorry, we're really all trying as hard as we can to keep up. Ms. Schutte, did you have a question?
It's more of a comment. I just wanted to talk a little bit, or not, comment about masks. Several of the callers called in about that, and I think we can all agree that collectively everyone's tired of masks. They're no fun, they're a drag, they fog up glasses. However, in order to keep businesses open and in order to get the numbers down and in order to keep each other safe and be mindful of our community and everybody's health, I think it's super important that we work together and continue to wear masks, even though they're a drag, because it's the right thing to do. And also with the social distancing. So I just think it's really important, and we need to be willing to look out for each other, so we can all get through this.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other raised hands. I'll accept a motion to approve Carson City's transition plan. Somebody like to make that motion?
So moved.
That worked.
I seconded it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the Carson City transition plan. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Good work, everyone. Okay, we're now going to go to agenda item 16A. This item is regarding direction for staff on the notice to appear and show cause why a business license issued to Five Star Motel doing business as Royal Inn at 1718 North Carson Street should not be suspended, canceled, or revoked pursuant to our codes. Ms. Sullivan, would you please take us through this item?
Thank you, Mayor. The subject property, as the mayor said, is located at 1718 North Carson Street. The business license is issued to Five Star Motel LLC, doing business as Royal Inn Motel. The business is also known as the Frontier Hotel. The business license is current. Municipal Code 4.04.210 establishes the reasons and process for suspending, canceling, or revoking a business license. In this section, it tells us that the business license may be revoked for good cause, and that includes actions such as any act in operation of the business that is made unlawful or is prohibited by ordinance, law, or rule of Carson City, as well as the existence of unsanitary conditions at, near, or in the premises which cause or tend to create a public nuisance or which injuriously affect the public health, safety, or welfare. Procedurally, the Board of Supervisors may, on its own motion or initiative, institute proceedings to suspend, cancel, or revoke a license. The Board of Supervisors, by motion, directs staff to serve a notice or an order to the business owner to appear before the board for a show cause hearing. The Board of Supervisors would then conduct a show cause hearing to provide the business the opportunity to show cause why the license should not be suspended. Relative to any act in the operation of the business as made unlawful or is prohibited by ordinance, law, or rule of Carson City, the staff has provided you with a memo from the sheriff's office stating its observations. Also, the sheriff and Lieutenant Gonzalez are here to elaborate on that memo, and as well as I'm sure they're prepared to speak to the inspection that occurred on Monday, should the board have questions. Relative to unsanitary conditions, the health department staff conducted an inspection earlier this week. The staff inspected 56 units. The health inspector observations included 15 rooms, plus an employee laundry room that had evidence of mice, bed bug, or cockroaches. 15 rooms did not have readily available hot water. 4 rooms had no flushing toilet. I think we have a health department here, maybe. I'm not sure. Nikki? Yeah, Dustin. Okay, so we have staff from the health department if you'd like more information about that inspection. Having said that, this staff report and this request before the board was prepared prior to the inspection. The staff felt there was enough there for the board to ask for the show cause hearing. So essentially what I'm asking today is that based on the information before you, and I'm sure you have questions about Monday's inspection as well, but even absent that, and I think that's interesting information to supplement the record, I think there's enough here to question whether this business is lawfully conducting business in Carson City and deserves the right to conduct business in Carson City. And I'm suggesting that this board direct staff to schedule a show cause hearing for May 20th at 11 a.m. And with that, that's the procedural information on the business license. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheriff, did you or Danny, whichever, want to comment?
Thank you. For the record, Sheriff Furlong. It was about a month, 2 months ago that information was received by me from the coroner's office of some challenges that are being met at what I refer to as the Frontier Motel. This resulted from a series of deaths that had either been attended to on scene or indirectly related to the Frontier Motel. I contacted Lieutenant Gonzalez with our investigations division to try and pull some more information together and look at like or similar circumstances in the area. The advantage to Lieutenant Gonzalez today is he's previously managed our special enforcement team, and we have had long conversations, continuous conversations over the years about the conditions and the management of the properties. In every case, I have been told personally in my office that they would work on those issues and problems. In every case, it just reverts right back to where we started from. Several times I've been told that the motel is up for sale, and just to allow them a little bit of time. The bottom line is this: the conditions are such a challenge there that, in my opinion, this spike in deaths in one location warrants a order to show cause.
Thank you. Did you have further comment, or you'll just let us ask questions? Mr. Booth, would you please come up? Could you please talk to us a little bit about the health conditions while in the facility?
Yeah. For the record, Dustin Booth. Environmental health staff went out with a team, the motel task force, on Monday, and did an inspection. And as Hope stated that found a lot of unsanitary conditions within the Frontier Hotel. Found evidence of rodent droppings. We've had outside the hotel previously. We've had issues with the convenience store there and rodent infestation there. So, but that part has been closed down. So, for several months in regards to that. But I guess they also found evidence of bed bugs within the hotel. And then the plumbing that some of the facilities didn't have plumbing, like Hope said, and so it just was. I know that there was some immediate, shutting down rooms so that because there are no sanitary facilities in those rooms.
So I guess that's really what I was looking for on the record, is you're indicating that they were not habitable. So it was necessary to actually close the rooms.
I don't remember the exact number, but there are some that were immediately, they did not have, flushing toilets or access to hot water. So those were needed to be dealt with immediately.
Okay.
And I do know that our human services part has been helping individuals in regards to some of those relocations.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have a question? Record, none. I believe the owner that this particular item is on wanted to comment on the conditions and why we should not show cause to revoke your license.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Carson City, one of the owners. Can we get his mic turned on? Just press the button there, sir.
There you go.
Good morning, everyone. I'm one of the owners, Harbans Honda. Bobby's my partner. Normally, he's there. I'm going to start going with the sheriff's questions first, then we'll talk about the health. We know we have some problem. We have some bad people. During the COVID, we even went to the court a couple times to evict them, and the judge keep giving them 30 days again. Since they are living a monthly here, they go out a couple days again. Those actually are also a problem for us. Even sometimes we go and they argue with us. They even threatening us. I even told a couple times police officer, those should not be there. It's a problem for us, problem for the city. We've been even trying to get them out, but since due to the COVID, those guys come back again. We know there is a problem, but we even talked to a couple of police officers come there all the time. We show them, hey, this guy's a problem. They keep loud playing the music loud. They get argue. I don't know. It's argue with a friend or somebody. It's a household. We was frustrated with them as well, but I don't know what to do with them. We told it in the police officers a few times. We went to the court for evictions. One lady, for example, even sheriff put a notice, eviction notice. They go back again, the judge gave them another 30 days. So we need help on that. We will work with the sheriff. There's no problem. Every time sheriff comes there, we work with them. I say, hey, there is the problem. There is the problem. Even there's some issue with some people, the druggies. We tell them, hey, these rooms, and take them. But when we find out when they come in, we don't know who's a druggie, who's not. We don't check. We don't check there is city history or drug history. They come, dress up nice. Hey, we're looking for rooms. That's fine, But then later on, it turn out they have some problem. Some of them, we give them within a day, hey, your money, we don't want you here, get out of here. But there is some problem been sitting here. Since due to the COVID, it's been over a year, we cannot get rid of them. So I don't know if sheriff want to help us. Actually, we want to work with them. We want to help them. We want to get out those are the problem people. So I don't know if anybody has a question on that. Maybe I can elaborate on more on it if sheriff has any questions. But due to that, I'm glad we can at least get those right now. But we want to work with this. We want to fix the problems. We want to have all the rooms have a problem. We talk about the health now. We never heard any room they don't have hot water. If people living there, if they know hot water, they were complaining. We never heard any person coming say, hey, we don't have hot water. Anytime we have a problem, we have people on site, we fix it right away. Prime example, if I can call a couple of the people, you can see it, how quick we finish. Talking about flushing toilet. So you think if toilet doesn't flush, how the people go to the toilet? It has to be flushed in order to work. In order to otherwise, you all understand if your flush toilet doesn't flush at home, what will happen? So I don't know. I was not with the inspection. Actually, I was out for the wedding. I was not there. Bobby was there. So, but if there is a problem, there's no problem. It can be fixed. If the client or the tenants tell us there is a problem, we was getting a lot of high water bill. We went each room, we inspected last year. We changed the better shower heads to save water. We changing a lot of the toilet. If it was not malfunction, we changed with a new one because the new one save water. So any toilet not working, we still have a lot in store. Any toilet doesn't work, we change it because it's better for us to save water. We knew the water consumptive the toilets. Talking about the cockroaches and the mice, we have termite people for the bed bugs. This is the only way we can get rid of the bed bugs. If client or tenant tell us the bed bug, we give them another room. We put it 24 hours. We have heat machines. They're the best. We spend thousands of dollars on those. We put a heat machines 24 to 48 hours. They should kill everything. And then once we see, then we even throw out the mattress. We give them new mattress. Maybe it's a lack of, I take responsibility. Maybe I'm not going every room. Do you have a bug? Do you have a bug? We don't ask anybody, do you have a bug? Do you have a bug? Cockroaches, same thing. We have pest control, termite, I have all these bills, Clark Pest Control. They comes like bi-monthly or monthly, and every time we call, they show, I have sometimes they come 2 times a month. And anybody has, they come and spray. There's a gentleman, you can call them, ask him, he called me, hey, I have some cockroach in my room. What we call pest control, they come same day, they spray his room, everything, and he was happy. He said, yeah, no problem. Next day, he said, well, nothing. So we're trying to do as best, but since the COVID, we got stuck so much, we couldn't do anything. And I appreciate that the whole team gave us time to clean up, improve, since most of the people are gone. Here's another question before I go that. Some people, they're living there 10, 15 years. That's their homes. They cannot take it out their belongings right away. they cannot find a house. I heard that, cities trying to help them some housing, they couldn't find it. This gentleman, this husband and wife, they work. They work in morning, come home, and they couldn't sleep in the car. They are 80, 70 plus year old. They are no troublemaker, nothing. They both husband and wife work. We're trying to help similar people as well for them. Some people, like the one lady, she been there 15 years. She said, "This is my home. Where should I go now?" She said, "I'm gonna die here. I've been here." She's like a mother to us. We even sometimes like, "Gina, how are you?" "Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine." She's on a wheelchair. So those things. I don't know. We all, have a families. So anyway, I won't go that way. But we need time. I want to work with this city. We trying to hire as I put it here. I don't know if anybody read it or not.
We did.
We're trying to find a independent contract company. So we go through the list. We don't even have the list of what is the problem, which room has a problem. And also, we like to keep a couple people to watch right now, nobody, after tonight, nobody will be there. We want like a good people. We know they're very good. Keep on one side in the back, one in the front. Watch at nighttime because I don't want anybody vandalism, people coming. A lot of people are mad. They was getting mad with us. It's our safety. They yelling at us, cussing, everything. So
I think we would all agree the situation isn't good for anyone.
yeah, so
Right? So I think we all recognize that. This particular agenda item discusses a show cause hearing on May 20th. So this doesn't revoke this action today. If we take it, does not revoke your license. It actually gives you an opportunity, sir, to correct the deficiencies and show us hired licensed contractors and things of that nature potentially on the May 20th hearing. So I need to be clear that this action is to do a show cause hearing, to do a revocation of your license to do business. I don't believe there's anyone here that is not supportive of you actually correcting the deficiencies and allowing those that have lived in your facility for all these years to be able to return to their home. That I think I can speak for all of us is our hope, is that we can correct the deficiencies. But we also can't let it get there again. It can't be a revolving door that it's good for 10 days. And so maybe there's some other opportunities for you to work with our health department on ways to inspect the rooms instead of waiting for someone to tell you there's an issue. Those are some discussion items that maybe staff can work with you to help bring this facility into compliance. But Supervisor Giomi, you have a question?
Yeah, you pretty much covered what I was going to mention. I was just going to ask Hope that, regardless of what we do here today, enforcement action will continue, irrespective of what we do. And just to assure the property owners in the community that the city is going to continue to try and resolve it to the safety of the community per the guidelines that we have in the code. I just, I think it's important for everyone to hear that we're just because this agenda item is here doesn't mean we stop.
That's exactly right, and I appreciate the mayor's clarification as well as your Supervisor, Giomi. If I may, just elaborate slightly. Yesterday, a declaration was made. That's not before this board right now. That declaration is intact, and that the board is not being asked to even opine on that right now. That's a health and safety matter. I've been with the city for 5 years. I've come before this board. This is my second time asking for you to set a hearing to revoke a business license. We don't take this lightly. We don't do this. We really don't until we're in a pretty bad place. What the board's being asked to do is to revoke a business license, you're being asked to schedule a hearing. Once you schedule that hearing, and I've identified the date of May 20th, you could choose May 6th, we could lawfully do that if you wanted to. You would then conduct the hearing. We would have to serve notice to the business owner that you are having this hearing. And at that point in time, you would take testimony from the business owner that gives the business owner a chance to identify the issues and identify a plan for rectifying the issues and avoiding replicating the issues. And on the 20th is when you take that testimony and you hear everything and you decide how to proceed. I feel like right now, there's enough for me to be before you and asking you to schedule that hearing. But the scheduling of a hearing does just that. It says we're going to conduct a hearing on May 20th. It's a procedural due process step. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I would agree with him. I think the bar is fairly high in terms of even getting to this point. And, you know, the fact that you're here and the evidence that you've presented, in my mind, is enough that we should have a show cause hearing. And, you know, sir, I appreciate the struggles that you have and that your residents have. I appreciate that. But I think the comment that you made that you don't even know what's wrong with the building is telling. I think it's your responsibility to know what's wrong with the building.
No, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm just saying that I think it's troubling that you're saying that you're waiting for a list of things that are wrong with the building, when in reality, it should be you who has that list already, not the city that provides it for you. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Jones?
I need some clarification. Is the facility closed now? Are the tenants being moved out?
Tonight, right?
The task force yesterday served notice that the property was uninhabitable.
So it closes tonight. There was a time specific?
7 o'clock tonight.
7 p.m.?
7 o'clock tonight.
That they all had to be out of the facility by 7 o'clock tonight, Stan.
Okay.
And extensive efforts by the city are being applied to place everybody who is in that facility currently.
Thank you. We have an obligation to the tenants, in my opinion. And this isn't the first time that this facility has come before the attention of the community, at least, that there's health conditions. I fully support closing it until it's brought up to code.
Do you have any further questions, comments? Okay.
So one thing, I request maybe couple rooms, like I say. I don't want those people causing problem coming back. Maybe somebody nighttime, a couple rooms.
Sir, we can talk to you outside the board.
Okay, sure.
I was just gonna,
Okay,
we'll look at that on a case by case. Certainly, the protection of property is paramount. I mean, we recognize that, and I think the city is trying to take some steps to protect property. So staff will address that with you in a little while.
And also, what is the May 20th for hearing?
I'll talk to you as soon as they vote. If they decide to have a hearing, I'll talk to you in the hallway.
Okay, yeah, but I'm just trying to bring, we trying to contact the contractor, licensed contractor. They are so busy, couple months ahead. We contacted about 10 of them. Bobby's right now still even contacting. Everybody's saying, sorry, we are so busy, sorry, we're so busy. That's going to be a problem. Like I said, we like to fix whatever is the problem, yes. But at the same time, we trying to contact any people who can help us. I will work with the city as well, the health department. I need their guidance. Hey, this, you know, I'm not saying I don't want to work it. I want to work with the city. I want to fix the issues and go back in the business.
Absolutely.
You know,
These are, again, two separate actions. And so one you may be able to resolve sooner than the other or not, based on what conditions you're able to remedy. But that is a separate action. All we're going to do today is determine whether or not we want you to come back on May 20th and let us know how it's all going and whether or not we feel that you've made progress or not. But that would be decided on the May 20th hearing, not today. But again, the staff here in this city are very vested in the success of all of our businesses, but also the protection of all of the tenants. So we really have a dual role in this case. And so we look forward to working with you to resolve what we can. So-
Yeah, like I say, some of the tenants, they say, we can go probably temporary there. They want to come back. But I don't want the troublemakers,
We understand. Thank you.
But some people, they're like, they want to come back. How soon can we come back? I told them, go with the city. We'll figure it out sooner we can. Well, we have all the name, the list, the telephone number, and we'll try to bring them back. And, those the people been there, so long, and, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Supervisor Jones, did you have another question or you're good? Okay. Seeing no other questions, I will accept a motion. Supervisor Giomi?
I move to direct staff to serve a notice of an order to appear and show cause as presented and to schedule a show cause hearing for May 20, 2021 at 11 a.m.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to serve the notice and order the show cause hearing for May 20th, 2021 at 11 a.m.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Oh, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, and good luck. Okay. We are gonna move, sorry, let me get myself, I don't usually go backwards on the agenda, but we will. We are gonna go back to item 14A. This item is for discussion and possible action on the selection of one or more applicants for this Carson City Treasurer. Ms. Burketta, are you going to take us through this item, please?
Good morning, Mayor, members of the board. This item is to select those applicants for treasurer that you wish to interview at the next board meeting. You received 4 applications, one from Mr. Dolly, one from Mr. Razor, one from Mr., I'm going to mess this name up, Mahasik, and one from Mr. Brewer. So you have 4 applicants to consider for treasurer.
Thank you. I don't see any questions. Do we have a preference? So our option is to bring the number of applicants forward for interview. We only had 4. If it's your pleasure, should we bring all 4 and just interview them? So we have choices. Supervisor White?
Looking at the applications, they all appear to be fairly qualified, so I think interviews are appropriate.
Okay. So I'll accept a motion.
I move to direct staff to arrange for interviews by this board at its meeting on May 6, 2021 of the following candidates, all of which Ms. Burketta mentioned.
All the submitted applicants?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to have all of the submitted candidates come for interviews on May 6th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay. We're going to move to item 15A for possible action and discussion on an exclusive negotiating rights agreement between Carson City and Palaseek LLP. Mr. Stuckey, can you give us the high level? It's been a long time since we looked at the Bud-Eye Way, and we have some new members that might not recognize the whole process that we had in place on this one. If you could take us through that, it would be
Yes, I will.
wonderful.
Thank you, Mayor.
Dan Stuckey, Deputy Public Works Director for the record. So yeah, if you don't mind, I'll provide a little recap. We do have the Palaseek team on WebEx right now. That's Omar Afife, Mike Schneider, and Michael Snodgrass. So if you have specific questions about the development, they are online to answer those. So this is regarding an affordable housing project proposed off of Buckeye Way, right across the street from the Public Works yard. This is really a strategic effort, a vision from the Board of Supervisors to provide more affordable housing in Carson City. We advertised a competitive request for proposals to partner with essentially a developer to develop affordable housing on that parcel. The board awarded in December of 2019, essentially directed staff to work with Palaseek to develop this affordable housing project. We all know COVID hit pretty heavy in March. That did delay some of the project actions, but now the development team is up and running. They've done a lot over the last 6 or so months. I'll highlight a little of that. They've conducted a major project review. They developed preliminary plans. We've done a zoning change from public to multifamily to make sure that that project can move forward. They have done, a couple of weeks ago, they conducted a public meeting. It was not too heavily intended, but they did make a big effort, sent out postcards to the area, and they had their whole team on there to provide updates on the specifics of the project, including drainage and traffic and those types of things. This is the agreement in front of you today. I do want to just briefly explain what it is. Palaseek is in the process of pursuing financing for the project through a variety of sources. No land has been transferred from the city to the developer. That's all going to be spelled out in a development agreement, which I want to make clear will be in front of the Board of Supervisors. We're already started to draft it and work with the developer. We're not there yet because a lot of these project details still need to work out, and we want to have something really clean and informative to bring to you. We're planning on that probably June-ish for that development agreement to come forward. In the meantime, to pursue this project financing, which they're hoping to pursue here in May, they need some sort of essentially a commitment from the city, I guess, more formalized commitment. So what this does is commits us to exclusively working with Palaseek to develop this project until essentially the end of the calendar year, so January 1st, 2022. In the meantime, it doesn't mean that we can't work on a development agreement. Once we bring a development agreement forward for your review, if a development agreement is executed, that would terminate this agreement. So that's essentially the summary of where we are on the project. In the development agreement, it will obviously spell out all the details, including the transfer of the land, how the transfer of the conveyance of the land is going to go, project details, construction schedule, affordability requirements and such. So the board will have plenty in the future to review and comment on. If you have any questions for me or the development team, we'd be happy to answer them. Thanks.
Supervisor Giomi?
Thank you. Dan, I had a question you partially answered, but I guess I wanted to ask for your thoughts on the process in terms of doing a development agreement before the financing is in place. I mean, does it, I guess we can write an agreement that sort of makes it contingent upon financing, but are there benefits to maybe waiting to do the development agreement until they've proven they've got some financing in place? It seems like a lot of work on our part if there's no financing behind it.
No, it's an excellent point, Supervisor Giomi, and that is something we can absolutely do. Mr. Snodgrass can comment, but my understanding is they will have a pretty clear picture on financing come June, maybe July. I could have misspoke on the June. So we're going to have probably
this July.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so once we have that, we can incorporate all that in. So yes, that's a good point, and we will have a clearer picture on that.
Okay. And my next question is in terms of the development agreement, since the city really has never done anything like this before. We've done certainly development agreements, but nothing like this before, where it's a fairly significant project and it has so much impact, potentially so much impact to the community and its members. Will we as a board have an opportunity to provide some meaningful input to the process, or do you envision giving us a final product and saying, hey, we have to decide today? I mean, I guess my druthers would be you bring us sort of a framework, conceptual framework of what the development agreement would look like, and then maybe we provide input, and then you go back and actually draft a development agreement. That's how I'd like to see it go. I'm one member, but I think because of that, I feel like we need to be guided a little bit and helped, and still have an opportunity to provide input that isn't just changing a sentence or two in the document.
That is 100% the plan. We have gotten a little head start, staff. We're probably on our third or fourth version of, and we've even started to get some back and forth with the development team. So we want to have something fairly polished, but absolutely 100%, we're going to bring it to you. You would have an opportunity to make meaningful comments. We would collect those, make the revisions, and come back at another board meeting in the future to make sure those are addressed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
I found a couple of really minor things, so I'll give this to you when we're done. Just
Do I have any further questions? Okay. Seeing none, I'll accept a motion. Supervisor Giomi,
I move to approve the agreement as presented.
do I have a second? I have a motion and a second to approve the agreement. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion carried unanimously. Thank you so much, and I know it will be an interesting project to accomplish, and may even help on the earlier situation that we just discussed. It may provide a really needed housing project in Carson City, so thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Go find the money. That's really the issue,
I will
right? Go
do.
find the money.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 15B, which is discussion and possible action regarding the draft license agreement and fee methodologies. We've talked about this before, but is Mr. Stuckey or Mr. Nellis gonna kind of start us off? Did we have a? Go ahead.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the board. For the record, Robert Nellis, City Property Manager. We just had one suggested change to the license template from what's in your packet. It's for your consideration in Section 18, formerly Section 17.
Hold on, section.
The new Section 18, formerly 17. That's on page 8 of 12.
Okay, on the insurance?
It's on, correct, yes.
Okay.
And also page 326 of your packet, if that's easier to locate. It would be the end of the first sentence of the new section 18.1, where it ends with, and written by insurers acceptable to the city in its reasonable discretion. We recommend striking acceptable to the city in its reasonable discretion and replace with, and written by insurers licensed to provide insurance in the state of Nevada. And that's been reviewed by the DA's office as well as risk management.
Thank you. Supervisor Giomi, you have a question?
I do. It is the plan, once we, and I know we're talking about South Carson Street here in a bit, is the plan to take this and, I know, for instance, we have license agreements or maybe it's an encroachment permit with, I don't want to name the business, but way out on Highway 50. So is the plan to take this and then start the process of doing it citywide? Is that the plan?
That's correct, Supervisor Giomi. This would be a template we could use anywhere on 50, North Carson, anywhere in the city. That's our hope, is that we could use this template for that. And of course, any significant changes would be brought back to the Board of Supervisors.
And if so, what would you envision the timeline looking like to go to those businesses that aren't on South Carson Street to sort of get this uniform?
Well, I'd recommend the next step after approval of this license is any exceptions on South Carson Street, that we take a look at those that have been spoken on the record before. So we essentially take care of everything on South Carson.
Right.
And then look at, for the board's consideration, whether we'd like to dispose of any parcels on South Carson as the next step.
Okay.
And then take a look at other areas in the city, such as 50 and North Carson.
All right, thank you.
Supervisor White?
Thank you. I want to thank staff for pretty well incorporating my concerns in regards to the hazardous waste situations that might occur and those that are occurring. And likewise, with the amount of work you did with Shelley Aldine, addressing her concerns. Also, a little bit off of what Stacy said, I know that some of those leaseholders down there are interested in acquiring those properties, and I think that moving forward with putting together a good, solid plan how that can happen is in the interest of not just in the property owners, but in the city. If we can eliminate some of that potential liability from the residents, I think that's something we really need to work hard on and move forward with.
I don't see any additional requests for questions, so with that, I'll accept a motion. Mr. White?
I move to approve the license agreement template and license fee methodology, authorize the city engineer or designee to execute the license agreements with affected property owners, and authorize the city engineer or designee to adjust the license fee each year in accordance with the approved license fee methodology and incorporate the suggested change approved by the district attorney as mentioned earlier.
As read into the record by Mr. Nellis.
Yes.
I second.
Second. Supervisor Schutte is the second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried. Thank you all very much. Thank you for a good job on this. I know it's a lot of work. Okay. Let me catch up. We did 16A. So we're now on item 16B. This is for discussion and possible action regarding the South Carson NID. We have a lot of new members that probably are not familiar with the arduous NID process. So, Mr. Plemmel, will you give us just a brief understanding of the statute concerning NIDs? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. For the record, Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director, and I was asked to kind of give an overview of the annual process that we need to go through to implement the assessments for these neighborhood improvement districts. So I've put up a slide there that shows the various steps that are necessary per NRS 270, Chapter 271 every year to implement the assessment. So with that first line there being this meeting. And obviously, on the left column there is the establishment of the South Carson Neighborhood Improvement District, or NID. And that's a one-time deal. We're doing that this year. Each year after that, it'll be the two columns on the right. We've obviously had a lot of discussions on this to get it set up, and we'll have some more discussion under this item about the first item. But when we started the downtown NID, working with the Deputy District Attorney Dan Yu at the time, you go through NRS, there's lots of requirements. There's all these steps. Within these steps, there's a lot of individual requirements that are a page, just summarizes another page, but you got to get into the details. So there's just a lot of requirements to do this every year, which, going through this at this meeting, we've got a resolution, and that has some requirements of what must be in it. For the South Carson Improvement District, we're establishing it, so we're going to establish some of the provisions, how the fee is, how the assessment is increased each year, how it's reduced, and things like that are going to be established for the assessment. So there's the establishment of it, and then for the assessment. For the assessment, you're estimating it today and scheduling the hearings for May 20th, at which time there'll be 4 items on your agenda. You have to offer a hardship waiver based on income. There's a public hearing for the complaints and protest, and then there's another resolution and an ordinance, and then adoption of a second ordinance to levy the assessment. So you will see a lot of items related to these. Now we have 2 neighborhood improvement districts, so now there are going to be 2 of those running parallel each year, but that's an overview of the process. Would you like me to
You
give
can go
an
right on into
overview on the
proposed
resolution?
Thank you.
Yeah, so this item that we're on now is for the establishment of the South Carson Neighborhood Improvement District. Sorry, let me get to the right item here. And just a few things to point out. So this is the first resolution. The ordinance on May 20th will be the enforceable action. So on the 20th, so if you have any modifications you'd like to make today to the resolution and the parameters, today would be the time to do that in the resolution. The ordinance will come back and contain these same provisions that are in the resolution. So just to highlight what we're doing, we've had a lot of discussions for the South Carson Street, but so as a reminder, the base assessment, I'm looking on page 355, which is the second page of the resolution, are kind of the core provisions of how we're setting up the South Carson NID. The first year assessment, and I think the numbers are somewhere else, but the overall cost of maintenance is roughly $142,000, some of which will be paid by Carson City, and that portion is established. The first year assessment to the property owners is $119,620, which is divided among the property owners based 50% on the parcel size and 50% on the frontage on South Carson Street. However, that at the direction of the board, that assessment is reduced each year by the amount in paragraph 3 by the amount that will be collected through the city right-of-way licensees agreements. So that was an item we just discussed before this one. Furthermore, the paragraph 4 provides for the annual increase based on the consumer price index. Again, this is following the same basis as we use for downtown now for increases, and that increases, it's clarified in here, it applies both to the property owner assessment and to the city's portion. Except that in paragraph 5, and again following the downtown, once there's a reserved reach, the actual assessment amount will be reduced. And there's a little bit more clarification in this paragraph than there was downtown, talking about how we project out for at least 4 years because there's maintenance that doesn't occur every year, so you have to plan out a little longer. But so this money can only be used for maintenance and not anything else. And when you have enough money for the maintenance with a little bit of reserve, you reduce the assessment. For example, when we get to the downtown item, the proposed to be reduced 23% from the base assessment this year. Anything else you'd like to add about that, Dan? I think that's the last provision in there, and there's other provisions that are required in here, but the assessment will be in the property assessments and paid. They're divided quarterly, just like property tax assessments. Any questions?
Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
I would say we've received we've received no comments to this. Although this isn't, there's not a public notice sent out for this action. This initiates the process. The next step will be after this to send out the property notice to each property owner for the May 20th meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Supervisor Giomi, you have a motion?
I do. I move to adopt resolution 2021-R-8.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 2021-R-8. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, I don't see anyone asking for a recess, so we'll just kind of keep on going, maybe through all this NID fun. We'll move on to item 16C. This one is to discuss a resolution for the South Carson NID. Lee, take us through this.
Just a brief overview. This is the resolution for the assessment for fiscal year 22, including the steps listed in the title. Again, this resolution will direct us. It estimates the cost. We file the assessment, fixing the time and place for the public hearing as May 20th, and directing us to provide notice of that public hearing.
Do I have any questions? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion. Supervisor Schutte?
I move to adopt resolution 2021-R-9.
I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2021 R-9. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. We're going to move on to item 16D, which is discussion and resolution on the Downtown Neighborhood Improvement District. Mr. Plemmel?
Same as the prior item in terms of the purpose. This one's for the Downtown Neighborhood Improvement District. As I mentioned previously, the proposed assessment for fiscal year '22 is estimated to be a 23% reduction from what the base assessment would otherwise be, which is $42,198.
Do I have any questions? Supervisor Giomi?
Yeah, just briefly, as in the past, you know, when you come back every year, or when Hope comes back every year, we can make adjustments to this, right? So if we're seeing a need in terms of maintenance where there's insufficient funds or we need to decrease it, I mean, we kind of look at it every year, I guess is my point, right? And sort of adjust as necessary.
You do look at it every year, and it can be adjusted to the extent within the parameters of the ordinance that was
Correct.
adopted or without amending the ordinance. I think there's some flexibility within, as we've done, planning out 5 years, there's some flexibility within there to how you determine that the reserve.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment
reduce
for the
it.
rest of the
Yeah.
board that it just, you know, just because we're taking an action today to reduce it by 23% doesn't
Right.
mean that a year from now, we can't reduce it again. Or we
Right.
can't slightly increase it if the need arises.
It was reduced 16% last year, and then reevaluating it this year, it's reduced 23% this year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll accept a motion. Supervisor Jones?
I move to adopt Resolution 2021 R-10.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2021 R-10. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The motion carried unanimously. Thank you. And I did see that. Yep, we're going to take a recess just till like 5 minutes after. So we're in recess. Thank you. bring the Board of Supervisors back to order. We are on item 16E, which deals with the appeal for the revocation of a special use permit for the asphalt plant and aggregate crushing facility. Mr. Plemmel, would you please take us through this item?
Thank you. Good morning again, and for the record, Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director. I'll give a brief overview on this and note that also we have the Deputy District Attorney, Ben Johnson, here to help assist me on this item regarding the Planning Commission's decision. And I know on the line, I saw that Thomas Pattian was there to represent the applicant, and when he's asked to speak, perhaps he can let us know if there's anybody else on the line representing the applicant. I just want to give a brief overview of what's happened thus far regarding this application. As you mentioned, this is an appeal of the Planning Commission's decision to revoke the special use permit for the asphalt plant located on Highway 50 East near the Lyon County border, as shown on the slide there. And this was the decision of the Planning Commission on February 4th, and it was based on, at that time, it was a show cause hearing, and there was a process before that. So yeah, and just a little bit, this is kind of a summary of the history. The special use permit for the asphalt plant at this location goes back to January 26, 2011 is when it was originally approved. There's some other, this is not an all-inclusive list on the screen there of all the actions that have occurred and reviews that have occurred for this. So I just skipping forward to December of 2019 is when the Planning Commission initially directed staff to conduct an investigation on the special use permit based on complaints of odors from adjacent residents and allegations of violations of the conditions of approval of the permit. So that investigation was conducted over the following year and brought back as part of the annual review in October of 2020. And the Planning Commission at that time directed staff to serve notice to the applicant to show cause why the special use permit should not be revoked or examined. It was in February, we sent the notice to the applicant, and on February 4th is when the Planning Commission reviewed the record that is included in your packet and voted to revoke the special use permit for 7-0 based on the evidence that was presented at that meeting and included in your packet. So just a little bit of background per Carson City Municipal Code, grounds for revocation include any of the following reasons, which include a failure or refusal of the applicant to comply with any of the terms or conditions of a special use permit, or an act or failure to act by the applicant or its agents or employees directly related to the special use permit, which creates or tends to create a public nuisance or is detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare. There's a list of others, and it's any one of these reasons could be grounds for revocation of a permit. In February, the Planning Commission made the following findings in their action to revoke the special use permit. They determined that TWA has been in violation of its NDP permit, which is in violation of special use permit condition number 12 regarding continued compliance with the NDP permits. Number 2, Tahoe Western Asphalt, also referred to as TWA, has violated the requirements of condition number 17, which requires odors to be suppressed, and that was the term used prior to June 4th, and prohibits odors from being detected beyond the property line after June 4th, 2020. And number 3, that the TWA operation has created or tended to create a public nuisance to the residents to the east of the property in violation of the Carson City Municipal Code due to odors leaving the site on an ongoing basis during hours of operation and when its plant is not in operation. So finally, just to wrap up my portion of the presentation here, possible actions that may be taken. These were the same actions that may be taken, that could have been taken by the Planning Commission, and now you can uphold their decision or reverse their decision and do one of the following. You could reverse their decision and approve the special use permit in effect to continue, which would be the unmodified, which would be the last effective approval is the one of February 26, 2020. There's that, which is included in your packet with those conditions of approval. You can reverse the planning commission's decision and approve the special use permit with additional or modified conditions. Number 3, you could suspend the special use permit for a specific time period after which it would be allowed to continue either unmodified or modified. And number 4, you could uphold the planning commission's decision and deny the special use permit. And the effect of this would be that they would have no valid special use permit for the operation of the asphalt plant. And for any future use on the similar use on the property, they would need to get a new special use permit, and they would be allowed to come in with a new special use permit for it. That's all I have. As I mentioned, I know the applicants we have on the line on the WebEx, and that concludes my overview of. You have the entire packet. You have the applicants' appeal information. You have a packet of late information that they've submitted, and the packet that was presented to the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Plemmel. Is the appellant on the WebEx? Do you know who?
It's Thomas Padian.
Mr. Padian, are you, just make sure we're unmuted properly and things so.
Yeah, can you hear me?
There we go. Yes, go ahead. It is now your
good
time
morning.
to present your case, please.
Yes, ma'am. As I said, Thomas Padian and Mark Johnson here on behalf of the appellant, TWA. I'm going to let my colleague, Mr. Johnson, start us off.
Good morning. A couple things I wanted to comment on Mr. Plemmel's, most importantly being the last item, or one of the last items. I believe he said that our submission to the board on this appeal was late. Actually, we submitted that in exactly the time period that Mr. Plemmel told Mr. Padian we were supposed to do so. So we certainly do not agree with the concept that it's late. But having said that, we can go through all of the information we said in our packet, but Mr. Padian will do that. But I thought what might make sense is to talk about kind of an overview of where we are in terms of the plant operations, and what I've set forth in our brief is where our appeal is where I think we think makes sense to go. First of all, this plant has been in operation for a number of years prior to any activities in terms of complaints or any of that issue. Notably, in terms of where we are in terms of this board's actions, the action that I think should merit this further discussion is the action on June 4, 2020, which imposed Condition 19, which required Carson City enforcement staff to go to the site and monitor it 3 times per month and to make a log of those findings. We've reviewed the Carson City enforcement staff efforts to comply with that requirement, and they do not comply at all. But they have been to the site since that date or been investigated 3 times. They went to the site twice in response to odor complaints. They received 9 odor complaints after June 4, 2020, in which they investigated, what's a reference in the report. They went to investigate 2 of those, the one in June 4th, I believe, and July 14th. Both of those events, they found no odors detected. So there is a conclusion in the Planning Commission report that all complaints are, quote, valid. The available evidence shows, in fact, all complaints are invalid. The only ones that were investigated were revealed to be false positives, to use the currently in vogue COVID nomenclature. But I think the reality is, and the point I want to drive home is, there's really no compliance with the condition that you folks imposed, which clearly is an attempt to figure out, is there really an odor problem at this site? And that gets to kind of where I'm going to go here, but a couple more things about plant operations. This plant has not operated since August of 2020. There is, as noted in our materials that I don't know if you've read or not, they're largely the same as the Planning Commission materials, if you've seen those. But this plant has not operated since August of 2020. It cannot operate without a permit from the NDEP. There are the 3 violations that are referenced in the findings of violations for the NDEP permit are currently under appeal. The next briefing schedule on that is set for the end of May. To talk about those just briefly, 2 of those events actually concern alleged failures of the air quality operating system. The first event, both of these events are on March 23rd and 22nd and 23rd of, I'm sorry, I do the 2018 or 2019. And important to note there, the first event is actually due to the failure of systems due to the inclement weather, which TWA cannot control. The second alleged operating violation of the permit has to do with an opacity reading, which doesn't necessarily equate to an odor problem. Opacity is a measure basically of opaqueness or obscurity. And so because something isn't very opaque or you can't see through it very well, it doesn't necessarily mean that it also is smelly or odoriferous or whatever term you want to use. So that plant will not be operating until the NDP permits are issues with the NDP permit are resolved. And we are currently working with NDEP on permit issues. We fully expect, and one of the things that we think would be helpful to all sides, frankly, is some kind of a requirement that measures or imposes limits on odors at the plant border so that we have some measure that's objective as to whether or not there is an odor issue emanating from the plant. So that's the first thing. So regardless of whether, even if the SUP remains in place as it is exactly the place right now, the plant can't operate until we work out a deal with the NDEP on new requirements for the plant. And as I just said, we're going to volunteer to have those requirements include a odor component, odor monitoring component. The problem with as I see it, the problem with what the odor components that are in the SUP currently are that they are very subjective. I may drive by McDonald's and find the smell of the French fries enticing. Others may drive by and find it revolting. But that's a very hard standard to enforce or to have any practical view on. I'm pretty aware that the smell of an asphalt plant isn't like a McDonald's or like a Rose, but still, there should be some, in my mind, some measurement that can be done. There are, I'm not a technical expert, but certainly there are particular elements of an asphalt stream that generate odors, such as, I identified in the papers, which you may or may not read, benzene. We can certainly monitor benzene, which if you'll go to a gas station, the smell that you smell is likely of benzene because that's a very aromatic or lighter end of the petroleum spectrum. Same thing's going to be true with asphalt. Although asphalt is a much heavier component of petroleum, it's still petroleum. And although it's very dissimilar to gasoline, it still has petroleum compounds that are the major cause of odors from it. So what I'm envisioning and what we plan to propose is a process whereby there's monitoring set up at the plant border, which detects those components and sets a level for what's acceptable and what's not. we're not trying to be a bad neighbor. We want to be a good neighbor, but we want to operate. Just as the people of Lyons County who made the complaints, I note Lyon County because I'm not aware of a single complaint by anyone from Carson City. But folks, actually, there's no complaint from anyone in Carson City referenced in the Carson City Enforcement Staff report. But nonetheless, those people have a right to have enjoyment of their property, and we understand that. But we need to be held. We're quite welcome to agree to letting them do that. But we need to have some kind of a standard that says whether or not we're actually doing that. And that's pretty much all I have to say. If you want to go through the details of what we said in our paper, we can certainly do that. But that is kind of the gist of where we are and where we our position.
Thank you, Mr. Padian. What I'd like to do is ask our attorney, Mr. Johnson, if he could please go through and talk to us about the points raised in their appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ben Johnson, Deputy District Attorney for the record. So this process has been going on essentially since 2018 for the members of the board that weren't on the board at that time. We've been dealing with this issue for a while. And it started in 2018 when the appellant made a request to modify their SUP. And at that time, that's when people from Lyon County started coming to the meetings and voicing their opposition and voicing their complaints. And since that time, the problem hasn't resolved. So we've been going at this for a couple of years now. And for the benefit of those who weren't on the board last year, there was an appeal that came to the board last summer in June 2020. And at that time, applicants had a different set of counsel, and that attorney represented to the board that TWA was working with NDEP on a new permit application and suggested that it included new odor control measures. At that time, the board requested that the attorney for TWA come back in August of 2020 to report on that application and the status of the NDEP and any odor control measures that had been adopted or implemented to stop the smell. So in August of 2020, they came back and they submitted a report that didn't include new equipment. And at that time, we found out that it was rather, instead of a permit for new equipment or odor control measures at the plant, it was actually a permit to bring their current operation into compliance. So there never has been, any kind of odor control odor control suppression equipment or plans or anything submitted to this body that would show that, they're serious about being a good neighbor and taking these complaints seriously. So then to get to the points that were made on the appeal and in the appeal letter. So first off, the appellant claims that, the city is actually not in compliance with their own order because code enforcement only went out 3 times after June 2020 to inspect the plant. So we do have, you've seen in your packet that code enforcement did go out to Lyon County in addition to receiving complaints from homeowners. But then on August 26, 2020 is when the NDEP issued a stop work order. So that's why you don't see monitoring reports, I believe, and Mr. Plemmel can correct me if I'm wrong, from code enforcement because the plant wasn't in operation. And if you go back in the record, you go back to the tapes of the people that testified from Lyon County, they don't have complaints of odor when the plant is not in operation. So that's why there hasn't been as many complaints or there haven't been, the site inspections because the plant hasn't been operating. So, I would disagree on the point that Carson City is not in compliance with its own order. There have been monitoring by code enforcement. You've seen in your packet the extensive logs, including logs of complaints that have been received. And then on to their second point, that the permit with NDP was revoked for reasons other than odor control, regardless of the excuse of why their permits were, the stop order it was issued. The fact is that they are not in compliance with NDEP, and the SUP CCMC requires that they are in compliance with Nevada law. As Mr. Plemmel pointed out, The fact that they're not in compliance alone is enough to revoke their SUP among the other items that were found by the Planning Commission. I would just note also in their letter, they claimed for the first time that I'm aware of in this case, in front of anybody, they claim that odor could be from another facility. I think they cite Brunswick Canyon Materials. There's never been any evidence, no testimony from any of the homeowners in Lyon County that the smell is coming from anywhere other than the TWA plant. I don't know where the process is with a judicial review, but we haven't been provided definitive evidence that that NDEP has resolved all the issues with TWA and that they do in fact have a permit that's operating in compliance with state law. For the purposes of the appeal, the standard that you're looking at is whether the Planning Commission had substantial evidence, or there was substantial evidence to support the Planning Commission's decision to revoke the SUP. And so what that means is that substantial evidence is evidence that a reasonable person might accept as adequate to support a conclusion. So it's not like a criminal case where, if you have a reasonable doubt that the odor is not coming from there, that's not the standard that we're using. It's whether or not there's substantial evidence to support, in the record, to support the decision by the Planning Commission. And I would submit to you that there is, based on the fact that their stop work order was issued based on the complaints from Lyon County and all the evidence that's been in the record.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Plemmel, will you please put the slide back up that shows the issues at hand that the Planning Commission used to, there you go, thank you very much. So I think it's important, again, that we're looking at this to determine whether or not the Planning Commission had substantial evidence to support these findings. Supervisor Giomi?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to make, a couple of comments on the appeal letter by TWA's attorneys. First, they hang their hat a lot on the language that was inserted after the June 4th, 2020 meeting. But prior to that, they still had a responsibility to suppress odors. And I think it was pretty clear to everyone, if you had followed the process from the beginning, that the intention was that you don't detect odors beyond the property. And in fact, that was the comments made by this board to them when they came before us at one point in the past. I don't remember the exact date. And so, to sort of slip and slide under the guise that, prior to that, you didn't have a responsibility to not have odors be detected beyond the plant, just don't hold water with me. Secondly, I myself, like other board members previous to this board, took a drive out there on numerous occasions and myself detected odors at that subdivision in Lyon County. So a couple of things I find quite offensive in the appeal. One, the implication that because the people who are detecting the odors are not in Carson City, that for some reason that would be that we shouldn't care and that we should just issue the permit because those people don't live in our county. And I know you didn't say that, but that absolutely is the implication. And it's the feeling that those people in Lyon County have and have had. So you can try and say that that's not what you're saying, but that's what you're saying. And secondarily, to cast aspersions on another business that's been operating in this community for decades that has nothing to do with what you're doing, I also find very offensive. So it's clear to me that the Planning Commission made the right decision, and that's how I'm going to be voting.
Have any other members? Supervisor White?
Thank you. I think basically part of my question was already answered, not only by yourself, but by Supervisor Giomi. I'm wondering if anybody in this room is also aware that there's an asphalt recycling plant on Newman Lane just about the same distance from this neighborhood as the asphalt plant. And has anybody looked at what they might be contributing to this situation? I think the answer is no, because you already said that you haven't had any complaints regarding any of that. But based on that, and if you can bring that map up of, if you look there, that little jog where these properties go around, that's a residence. There's a person that lives there. We haven't had any complaints from that person about odor. I mean, that where that long, thick red line is there, that's the driveway into the asphalt plant. There's people who live on that piece of property right there that's not within this project site. So the fact that somebody that lives, absolutely a neighbor, is not complaining, I have to wonder how significant the issue really is when, if you look at the log of site visits and neighborhood visits, it's pretty sporadic as to whether the people making those visits actually detected an odor of asphalt. And again, with a neighboring asphalt plant just about the same distance to the east, I don't know how you could tell whether it's coming from one place or the other. I understand our prevailing winds are from west to east. I don't know. I don't know what the true source of the odor is, to be perfectly honest with you.
Thank you. Do I have any further comment? Well, then, can you please go back to the Planning Commission's points? So I would like to start with the first point indicating that they have a violation of their NDEP permit. Do we all agree that's accurate? NDEP has, as he indicated, they are not operating because of their NDEP violation. So in my opinion, we would uphold number 1 and concur with the Planning Commission, because that is indeed a fact, as evidenced even by the appellant, if I'm not mistaken. They, on the record, indicated that they're, as of August 26th, they have been closed due to the NDEP. So I believe, number 1, the condition has been met and the burden by the Planning Commission's ruling has been met. Looking at number 2, that they indicated they have, the Planning Commission believes they did not meet condition number 17, which was requiring the odors to be suppressed prior to the June 4th and prohibited after the June 4th. That one is a little bit, it's 2 parts. So obviously, based on the evidence that the Planning Commission accepted and this Board of Supervisors did in prior hearings, the prior to June 4th, I think has been amply displayed and shown to be accurate. After the June 4th, I will admit, to me, reading Mr. Krogenberg's log, he, on June 12th, indicated no odors, June 14th, no odors. And obviously, no odors could be detected because the plant has been closed since August 26th. So that one's a little more difficult to uphold in 2 parts. The first half of that sentence I agree with completely. The second half's a little more difficult. The third sector of this is it an ongoing odors leaving the site? And when the plant is not in operation. I guess I'm having a difficult understanding again about the very last sentence. When the plant is not in operation makes no technical sense to me. And maybe there might be a technicality I'm not understanding, but if it's not operating, there's no odors. So maybe I need a little explanation on the last piece of the sentence in number 3.
We found that based on complaints and actual observation that there were odors during times of operation. We think it's just atmospheric conditions that sits in a bowl. There's material on site even when they're not operating, so after. So they might have made the material the day before, and at night it's still sitting there, and due to atmospheric conditions or whatever, as the wind picks up, it starts moving. When code enforcement was out there, talking about the source of it, I'm confident that when code enforcement was out there, they traced the source back to this plant. In other words, in the neighborhood, the odor's less strong. When they're farther away from it, gets stronger as they get close to it. It is certainly sporadic because it's dependent on the wind and which way it's going. And just while I have the mic, I want to clarify for the record too, for the appellant, when I said that the appeal was submitted in a timely manner, and my reference to late material was you received something earlier this week from the appellant, which that's our term, late material, because it was submitted after the agenda was posted. But just for the record, the Board of Supervisors has that for consideration today.
And so then for me, when I look at everything and what's most bothering for me, and I hope the appellant can hear, there was only two of us on the board at that time, but the appellant at that time had indicated that they were going to be bringing new equipment to suppress the odor. And so I'm highly disturbed to find out that the permit that they were submitting to NDEP did not include the equipment for odor detection, for odors to be reduced. And so I feel like this board was led down a promise that the appellant has not upheld. That was, to me, the overriding decision for me to allow them to find a piece of equipment so they could stay in business, so that we could be friendly to both the neighbors and to the business, that they would purchase a piece of equipment. Also, listening to the appellant today, you indicated that you could purchase odor detectors. You've had, since 2018, that opportunity to purchase detectors to determine whether or not your plant was emanating an odor that was inappropriate. You chose not to take that action. So I'm not, and maybe procedurally, Mr. Johnson, you can help me a little bit here. Can we strike portions of this and uphold portions? What's the methodology?
Yeah, Ben Johnson, Deputy District Attorney, for the record. Yes, I believe that you don't have to adopt all of the findings of the Planning Commission. You can if you don't find that there was substantial evidence to support one of them, that's fine. You can make the determination to uphold or deny the Planning Commission based on any number of the three findings that they made.
Thank you. Okay. So, like I said, and maybe we can just look at these one at a time together. Are we all in concurrence with number one? They're in violation of their NDEP permit. Does anybody feel differently? Everybody agree? The permit has been revoked since August 26th. So we can uphold number one. Looking at number two, can we uphold and just strike the last part about the after June 4th? Because the logs that were submitted to us they all say there was no odors. Unless I'm missing something that one of you can bring to my attention. Supervisor Giomi?
Yeah, I don't feel that there's enough operational time for us to assess that. I wouldn't just flat out discount it, but I would agree that condition number two certainly existed prior to June 4th. And whether or not it existed after June 4th, I'm not convinced it did, but I'm not convinced it didn't, quite honestly. So I would agree with that.
So we would potentially just strike after June 4th. We would leave the rest of it, the rest of that sentence. We would just strike the final parenthesis after June 4th. We have no evidence one way or the other to uphold or not uphold. And like you said, they've been closed, so I guess it's a pretty difficult.
Let me ask
yeah.
this question to the extent what you're bringing up matters. So let me ask Ben and Lee, if I might, Madam Mayor, if we decide today to uphold the Planning Commission's decision, and they get permitted again by NDEP in September, October, or whenever they get permitted, what would the process be for they would have to just apply for another special use permit and go through the entire process again? Is that a fair statement?
Ben Johnson, Deputy District Attorney, for the record. Yes, that's correct. If you uphold the decision and revoke the SUP, there's nothing preventing them from becoming in compliance with all that they need to do with the state. And they would submit a new application for an SUP that would be reviewed by the Planning Commission.
So other than the history of their performance, what we find or what the Planning Commission found is sort of immaterial. I mean, if there's one finding to revoke the permit, then it really doesn't matter what the other findings are, because it's going to be a clean slate. We're going to start again, and we're going to put, in theory, different or maybe the same or maybe more specific conditions on a new SUP were that to come before the Planning Commission and this board for approval. Is that a fair statement? I guess what I'm saying is, does it really matter for us to go through and break down all three of these? If we feel there's enough evidence in the totality to uphold the Planning Commission's decision, does it matter if we have agreement or disagreement on a sentence in one of these comments at the end of the day?
Ben Johnson, Deputy District Attorney, for the record. No, as I stated before, I believe that, any one of the findings made by the Planning Commission could be upheld. And, that alone, as I mentioned, the permit alone, is a condition that has to be met, and it hasn't been. So you don't have, I believe you're correct. Yes, you do, whether you find on the other two, isn't as important. If you find on one, you can revoke the SUP.
And I guess what I'm saying is that I don't know if it benefits us or them or the community or anybody to go and nitpick sentences. I think in the totality, which is what we're talking about, I feel like we should make a decision, in the whole. So that's my 2 cents worth, I guess.
Yeah.
Except that Dan, of course, doesn't agree with me.
Mr. Yu? Raise your hand. Oh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the record, and maybe to address a point of procedure for clarity, and I did want to springboard off of what Supervisor Giomi was saying, which is, I think Supervisor Giomi makes an excellent point, is that, and I don't want to advocate for or against a certain outcome, of course, as board counsel. However, as a matter of procedure, I did want to address, what Mr. Johnson had said earlier on the record, which is, what we're really looking at as a board here is whether or not there was substantial evidence to support the Planning Commission's decision. And what that means is, and there is a distinction between that as a matter of judicial review, which is what this board is currently doing right now as a quasi-judicial tribunal, versus a burden of proof. And the burden of proof that the Planning Commission might have had to meet in the earlier stages of this in determining whether or not to recommend or to actually make that decision of revoking an SUP was a preponderance of the evidence. And I believe that's the standard of proof without looking it up, and that's codified in Chapter 18.02 of CCMC. Now, what's before this board, and again, as Mr. Johnson had pointed out on the record, is this board is faced with the inquiry, the decision of, was there substantial evidence? And what substantial evidence really means, as analyzed by the Nevada Supreme Court in previous cases, is when a tribunal is looking at a lower proceedings decision, was there enough evidence for a reasonable person to have concluded or to arrive at a certain conclusion? And so, again, to Supervisor Giomi's point, certainly this board, if it wanted to, you could go through line by line and determine whether or not there was substantial evidence. You could, however, as an alternative, also look at it as a package and decide for yourselves whether or not the Planning Commission, as the lower public body, had substantial evidence to make that decision, meaning, was it reasonable versus was it arbitrary and capricious? So I did want to note that for the record. There is a difference between that as a matter of judicial review and preponderance of the evidence as a matter of a standard of proof, two totally separate and distinct items. So I just wanted, again, just to kind of provide that clarification for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Yu. Supervisor White?
Thank you. And thank you for that, Dan. And that really kind of circumvents my wanderings in regard to number 2 there. Myself, I would not find a preponderance of evidence with number 2 to find that TWA is in violation.
However, Mr. White, number 1 and number 3, is it, again, they're different.
I would, same answer for number 3 as number 2.
For you.
Yes.
Okay. Supervisor Schutte?
Thank you. Regarding the alternatives, the Planning Commission unanimously voted for alternative number 4, denying the special use permit. Is there something, could the same, could we meet the objective by choosing alternative 3, suspending the special use permit for a specific period of time, after which the special use permit in effect would be continued, either unmodified or with modified? Is that something that is appropriate or would really meet the objectives of the odor management? And one of the areas that I'm concerned about from TWA's, what they wrote was the equipment, how it failed to work in freezing temperatures. Well, Carson City and Lyon County, we get freezing temperatures. That's not an unusual event. So for weather to undermine equipment and cause equipment failure, that's just bad equipment for this area. So I think there's ways for TWA to mitigate the odor if they're truly serious about doing it and not looking for reasons why public comment doesn't matter or it's not valid, or because it's in Lyon County versus Carson City, it therefore doesn't affect human beings in the same way. I struggle with that, but is there a way to seriously manage odors, or is it an impossible undertaking, in which case that's a completely different conversation?
I think it's probably more difficult for those board members that haven't been here for years dealing with this issue versus potentially the information that we have received. And so while I tend to understand your thought process of a consideration, I think the company itself has not demonstrated good faith to me. And that's where I struggle and understand why the Planning Commission at this point has said, we want to revoke it and you can start over, bringing forth the actual piece of equipment and the suggestion that I heard from them that they would put odor detectors. I think that it's time for us as a board to indicate, we're not accepting that I will anymore. So by revoking their permit, they now have to bring it with their new application to be considered. So it is a little tougher stance, because if you kind of go the other way, then they're going to get their permit back from NDEP. And so I have a specific question though. Will NDEP approve an operating permit if they don't have an SUP in place? Is there right? It's an independent review by NDEP, if that makes sense. What I'm saying is it doesn't stop the NDEP process. Okay. I just
Right,
wanna-
we've communicated, I've kind of looked back behind me to planning manager, but it would be, that's independent, and they need both, but NDEP would continue its review of any permit, but the actual operating would be subject to obtaining whatever local approvals required.
Okay, okay. Supervisor White?
Thank you. Did I understand earlier that TWA, and maybe the folks there on the phone can chime in, they have a new set of lawyers at this point? So I do understand that this has been ongoing for a long time and impacting the lives of a number of people. But for me, in the interest of keeping folks employed and the understanding that they are not going to operate until NDEP is happy with them, understanding also that NDEP has a wide latitude of things they can do when they're dealing with an operator that maybe perhaps has not been completely forthcoming. They can be really hard-nosed. I think if this company is indeed going to now be a good neighbor with new lawyers and NDEP on them, I think allowing this special use permit to stand may be an incentive for them to continue. And again, my concern, one, is that we keep people employed, and two, we do mitigate this, which I think we can do both if we allow the special use permit to stand today.
Thank you. Supervisor Jones?
This isn't something new.
Is your microphone, please? It's okay.
This isn't something new. We've been addressing this for probably 3 or 4 years. I have a question. Did you say they bought the new equipment or they didn't buy the old equipment?
As far as Ben Johnson, Deputy District Attorney, as far as I know, Mr. Supervisor, there was representations made that they were looking at new equipment, but as to my knowledge, there's no new equipment has been implemented or installed at that plant specifically to control odor.
So with that in mind, they're not operating in good faith, in my opinion. And I cannot support them until they do.
Thank you. So this hearing is really, again, to determine whether or not there was sufficient evidence that the Planning Commission used in the body of evidence to determine that the special use permit should be revoked. And so that's our issue at hand. While I agree with Mr. White, and I think even from our earlier discussion today, we are always weighing public safety and business, and it's difficult, as you said, but to me, this particular company has already demonstrated bad faith. I guess that's really what's there for me. And so while I might not necessarily agree with every single point in the Planning Commission's report, the total body of what they looked at is sufficient and I think meets the burden and the standards. So I'm going to support the Planning Commission and deny the appeal. But we'll take a little bit of final. Mr. White, you can have your very final, and then we'll go to motion. Thank you.
Thanks again. So as we've established today, we all agree that they are in violation of NDEP. that's one piece of the findings that were sent to us in acknowledging that we agree with finding number one. Does that obligate us to uphold the Planning Commission's recommendation?
I think that's well, you can answer it, Mr. Johnson. For me, it's up to each of us individually to determine whether or not the body of evidence that the Planning Commission used to make their decision was sufficient to meet the burden. That's, and I know for some of us, maybe only number one is met. I think the vast majority of two is met, and I believe number three is met. And so for me, there's sufficient body of evidence to indicate that the Planning Commission made a good decision. That's for me. And if I'm wrong, Mr. Johnson may correct me.
Ben Johnson, Deputy District Attorney, for the record. I don't think there's anything that obligates you to make a decision one way or the other. I mean, the conditions are in the code, and the condition is that they have to comply with, all state laws, and there's evidence that they are not in compliance. So, I mean, the decision is yours to make, and based on, whether or not there's substantial evidence, and if you believe that, that they are in compliance, or that, the Planning Commission didn't meet its burden, then, you can vote how you want. I don't think that there's anything obligating you to vote one way or the other. I mean, the conditions are what they are in the code, and so it's up to you to apply what the evidence has been presented. And perhaps, Mr. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay. With that, I'll accept a motion. Supervisor Giomi.
I move to deny the appeal and uphold the Planning Commission's decision to revoke the special use permit.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to deny the appeal and uphold the Planning Commission's decision to revoke the special use permit. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Let the record reflect, it was 4 yeses and 1 no. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 16F, which is discussion and possible action regarding amendments to Title 18. Mr. Plemmel, will you please take us through this item?
Thank you again, for the record, Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director. This item, again, part of the continuing workshops regarding Title 18 and opportunities for comment from the Planning Commission and Board and the public. This item is to discuss the development standards of Division 2, which is parking standards, and Division 3, which is landscaping. Let me just start by noting we've gone through a lot of the administrative things and other zoning issues. This is now parking and landscaping. The Planning Commission has reviewed signs, and once we get through that sign standpoint, we're actually through the really meat of the zoning issues. There's a lot of other development standards that relate to trails and parks and engineering standards, but I think we're getting there to where this is ready to be turned in, after reviewing this and signs, ready to be turned into a final presentable ordinance format. But in terms of these two sections, you have the sections in there with proposed revisions. And I'm not gonna, I really don't want to walk through the whole thing individually, because I think generally both landscaping and parking sections have functioned pretty well. There's summary documents at the start of each one. I think there's really some cleanup from our practical experience over the last almost 20 years of using this to do some cleanup. I've gotten some suggestions from some board members about some cleanups. For example, for Supervisor Giomi mentioned referencing the wildland urban interface for landscaping, and I spoke with the fire department about that, and that's something to add in there, that it not list all the standards, but that it has to comply, so that people, when the design professionals are looking at it and they're aware of it when they design it, so they're not getting those comments after they submit a building permit. So a lot of cleanup verbiage. kind of one with trees again and ground cover from just experiences in actual uses, just a little bit of modification there. The only thing I might mention is it's adding, again, related to water usage and turf in the landscaping 3.6, just adding a section expressly allowing the use of artificial turf as covering, and as long as there's, try to have some standards in there that it's not a green carpet, but a turf that's designed to look like grass, which the products are certainly available now. And that also is it's permeable to rain too. Those surfaces actually catch and hold rain. So it's still something that looks like landscaping. It's soft surface and is not causing additional runoff. So we think it's been used effectively over the last few years without it being expressly allowed. So we think it's time to write that in there. So if there's anything you'd like me to go through, I'm happy to, or just maybe just be available for questions.
You want to take down your presentation from the past item? Because thank you. Supervisor Giomi?
Yeah, Lee, thanks, and thanks for your emails back and forth and your comments. I just wanted to bring up the ground cover part and maybe to give consideration or at least discussion a little bit. In Las Vegas, they have sort of a trade-off where you can do hardscape features sort of to swap out for trees. And I know we kind of talked about that, but if a given site requires 7 trees and 4 shrubs, 5 gallons or bigger, whatever, if you did, sort of an equivalent size, and I didn't get a chance to get a hold of their ordinance, but I just, as we look at water being a finite resource, it just seems like we could be a little more permissive in terms of not requiring things that that require water, but also add sort of an architectural or a landscape feature. And I just wanted to throw that up for the board. And I don't know, maybe it's just flat out too difficult to put into a code in terms of enforcement, but I'd really like to encourage that because I think there's some, you can do an attractive front yard without any plants, quite obviously, or quite frankly. And I don't know that we, don't want any plants because I think we do want some, but I just wanted that to be considered.
Yeah, I'd be happy to look at that further. And I think, as I mentioned a little bit about the pervious surface, I don't think you want a one-for-one swap of decorative concrete for landscaping that would otherwise soak up water, then it gets into drainage issues.
Right. Yeah,
but that's not
the
to say
opposite.
there
But
aren't.
that's not what I'm saying.
That's
I'm
not to say
saying
there aren't designs
exactly.
that include that
Yeah.
that don't. Yeah.
But I mean, if you require 3 trees, maybe
Or not.
one of those trees could be a rock feature,
Right.
not acres of rocks, but a single rock.
Gotcha.
Which, really doesn't, do that much damage.
Something
in
that's
terms of-
three-dimensional, not the
Correct.
flat.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's, yeah.
A good way to say it.
Yeah, that's a really good way to say it. Yeah, that's why you're there and I'm here.
Yeah. Supervisor Jones?
This is, I think, an excellent one, Lee, that you've done this time. I really like this. My problem is we demand this of people and then there's no follow-up. And it drives me crazy when I drive around town and I see a whole block of nothing but weeds and dead shrubs. And I don't know how you control it, but we have it. A few years ago when Ronnie Hanneman took it on herself and she embarrassed people by publishing it in the paper that such and such property looked like Appalachia. And, I really support the landscaping. I truly do, but how do we control it? Or is there a control?
There is.
Well, this ordinance has been in place since about 2002, somewhere around there, and it was at that time, because I recall when it happened, that towards the end of there's a section about maintenance and requiring it to maintain it. Before that, it just said you had to put it in. There was nothing in there that said you had to maintain it. And certainly around town, we do have stuff that's not only predates 2002, but even much older than that. And these standards apply to, looking at
New
to new,
construction.
to new construction. So it's only, and even with the maintenance, so things that have come in the last almost 20 years now, they do, all the landscape plans have that maintenance thing where we can go back and get them, but there's just a lot of older development in Carson City that we actually can't go back and make them put in new landscaping. Until such time as they redevelop it or expand their
So are
their
we
building.
enforcing that now? Really? I'm surprised. I didn't know that.
Yes, I mean, I can't say that there's not a dead plants out there
No, I'm
somewhere,
not-
but
I'm not
yes,
talking-
there's
yeah.
certainly on the newer
Okay.
stuff, yeah.
I think, wasn't there one we did, I don't know. It's all running together at the time, but wasn't there one with a whole bunch of tumbleweeds and all of this on one of the properties near Longview? So we do have complaints that go to code enforcement, and then they look up the particular parcel and the rules of the game, as Hope likes to say. And so I know we do have some enforcement of the rules on that. So Supervisor Schutte?
Thank you. I really appreciate what Supervisor Giomi said regarding the trees and other options, perhaps instead of 3 trees, having 2 and maybe a piece of artwork or something, or I think it could really bring a lot of visual interest to our community. I do struggle, however, with artificial turf, and I know that it really has made amazing strides, but I think for landscaping, I just struggle with artificial products.
So can I follow up on that? So I will just tell you, in my neighborhood, so it's not expressly disallowed, so they have been doing it. I can tell you, I have neighbors with artificial, and it's, beautiful all year long. It never browns, but it hasn't appeared to cause any drainage issues. Is that what you were articulating, that you've seen it enough now with the newer products that are out there that it has not caused us drainage issues? And so you find it okay?
Well, certainly that doesn't cause drainage issues because it is a product that's not, in the events it's been used recently, it's not laid on concrete, so it creates a path for drainage. And, it's really not, it hasn't been used that much. Do you see it a lot in building permits? I mean, it's available. I mean, I think there's a cost to it. It costs more up front. I think people are still tending, if they want that type of area, they're still at this point tending to put in real grass. If it's artificial turf, it's for more smaller decorative areas where if you had grass there, you would tend to overwater onto the other places. So I guess the question was, it hasn't been vast seas of artificial turf that look bad, and I don't think it will be. Besides sports fields and things, obviously where you use it, it's generally been used as decorative areas because you can do more with it in odd shapes that are hard to water.
Thank you.
Maybe I can even clarify differently. One is a developer coming in and wanting to use artificial, but I'm talking of an individual homeowner that wants to remove their grass, they can put in artificial. I guess
And
that's
this doesn't apply to the individual
to the
homeowner at
individual
all.
homeowner, right? Okay, thank you.
And I would just throw out to you that there are a lot of communities in the Southwest, Southern Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, where they don't allow live turf. They flat don't allow it because they don't have the water to support it, So you either have to do rockscape or trees or plants or fake grass, I'm not saying I like it either, but I also like drinking water, so.
Oh, well,
Yes.
absolutely. And I think the
Usually
whole,
mixed with something, but I like drinking water.
I agree. I think the whole desert scape though, so it definitely, I'm not promoting lawn, on the contrary. I think we all need to be better stewards of our water and our environment. Perhaps just more creative landscaping with low water using plants and light rock versus dark rock or vice versa, because I know one really heats up and creates its own issue, which is why the trees are so important and the shrubs. And it's that blend that I think will be useful.
I do want to say on the topic of turf that I forget how many years ago now, but it was after this was adopted, we had a pretty comprehensive review of the standards regarding turf and have modified them since it was originally adopted, working with Public Works on the water saving issue, and just kind of with community input, it was not the time yet to have a total ban on turf. It's not required. I mean, one thing that there was a misperception for a while is that we require people to put in turf, and we do not require commercial business to put in turf, but it's still an option. However, there's a limit in how much they can use actually built into here. So that's where we've landed so far.
Does anybody have any other thoughts that they want to send Mr. Plemmel's way before he leaves us so he can do all the final work on this? We're going to use him right to the bitter end. Supervisor White?
Thanks again. I know there wasn't anything in the support material or late material, but have you heard from the construction world, the developers on this set of modifications?
No, and the Builders Association has been monitoring it and not submitted formal comments yet. I would also note that kind of they're more interested in, there's not a lot of significant changes at this point. They haven't identified anything that's wrong to us that we would indicate some significant changes. And I would note that you have a lot of details in there, and those are existing, and say those should be updated as well. And, without going to the details now, that's where we would work with the landscape industry and specifically to get the latest, because these are 20 years old now. Some of the references aren't right. So going through and updating all of those technical details will also happen when we look at this.
Okay.
I don't see anyone with any further discussion or items, and there's no motion necessary for this. I think Mr. Plemmel has enough just in the general discussion. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move on to, I think we could just have a chair there all the way till May 7th. He can just stay right there and work through these. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 17A. Discussion of possible action on a resolution creating the Special Revenue Fund for the South Carson Street Neighborhood Improvement District. Ms. Russell, I don't think, unless anyone doesn't have any questions, this is just a formality. I don't see any questions. Then I will accept a motion. Supervisor Giomi.
I move to adopt resolution number 2021-R-11.
Is there a second?
I second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 2021 R11. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone knows, indicate no. The motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to, item 17B for our tentative budget. Miss Russell, take it away.
Thank you very much. I'm so sorry about the volume of information that I give you guys, but we want you to be well informed. I also want to take a moment to thank the finance office. I could never do this budget without them in a legislative year, as well as two of our largest unions negotiating. A lot has fallen on my staff to take care of this budget, so I really can't thank them enough. And then, of course, all the department heads have been incredible in submitting their information and working with us and making sure we have a good package for you here. So I will first say that the tentative budget was due today to the Department of Taxation. So we took it down earlier this week. It has been submitted. Today are any changes that we're looking at for the final budget. So the first thing I want to do is go through a little bit of the projections, the history, and then where we landed on the budget, the tentative budget. And then we'll talk about supplemental requests that the department have requested. Those will be added into the final budget if approved here today. And then the next item is the capital. So I'm going to go through the slides a little bit quickly, just because I know you guys have a lot on your agenda today. So please stop me if you have any questions. So the first slide here is the entire city revenue, all in one pie chart. All enterprise funds, all the city's revenue. The intergovernmental resources is that black pie, and that is really our C-tax. And then any grants that we receive. So I just wanted to point that out because that one is a little, it's not overly evident what it is. And then the next slide is our expenditures. Again, this is all the citywide expenditures crammed into one pie chart. As you can see, public safety is our #1 expenditure, always is. So that includes police, fire, juvenile probation, detention, and alternative sentencing. Because this is all of them, it includes the 911 surcharge and public safety grants as well. And then my favorite display is the bunch of numbers. That's the next slide. So this is for everybody who likes pretty pictures and everybody who likes numbers. But the numbers represent exactly the 2 slides that I just showed you. And then we'll talk about the general fund a little bit. So this is just narrowing into our operating fund, our general revenue fund. And as you can see here, these are just the revenues for that fund. We've got the C-tax and the intergovernmental being our largest piece of the pie. During the recession, taxes, property taxes, and C-taxes were pretty even, but you can see that C-taxes are doing a bit better than property taxes right now. The next slide, we did only have a 1% C-tax increase for fiscal '22. Again, being conservative. And then it's 3.9 for is what we're projecting for fiscal '21, the rest of fiscal '21. The next slide is all the general fund revenues. This is just a historical where our revenues have landed. And as you can see, the orange, the C-tax, they've grown a little bit as far as the total taxes or total revenues the city collects. The next slide, this is lovingly referred to as our cigarette slide. This shows us the property tax rate over several years. You can see in 2013, which was kind of the bottom for us of the recession, we had the property taxes all the way up to 3.66, which is the maximum. The next year, we got rid of the fire district and just combined that with our current fire department. And so that 10-cent rate went away. So it decreased by 10 cents. The board elected to decrease it by 2 cents. And then in 2018, we added 5 cents to go towards capital plans, the capital or the asset management program, capital. And then we have not changed it since. With assessed value growing, it doesn't make sense to change it. No more revenue would come in anyway. Okay, the next slide shows the county-wide tax rates. I just want to point out here we are one of the lowest in the state at 3.57. The next slide just shows assessed valuation of property, and the orange line is the actual revenue we're collecting. So you can see even with a stagnant rate since 2018, we're continuing to collect more revenue, and that's because assessed value is increasing. With the property tax caps, in '22, the cap is 3% for residential and 3.7% for commercial. So no matter how much assessed value increases, it actually increased by 4.9. We're still only going to get 3% for residential and 3.7 for commercial. The only difference to that is that any new property that comes on, we would get the full tax rate. All right, the next slide is our taxable sales. So we're moving on to C-tax now. And so this is just the taxable sales. And as you can see, the green are vehicle sales, motor vehicle sales. They are our biggest sales tax right now and have been for quite some time. I did add the little blue, the non-store retailers, which is the internet sales. As you can see in 2012, you can't even see that little blue line, but in 2020, they're actually exceeding our food and beverage. The next slide, I looked at this and thought, oh, if that was a stock, I would totally buy it. However, this scares most financial people because it's trending since 2010 up. So that's 11 years of increases. And that's very scary because there is always, every 10 years, there's some kind of economic recession or a downturn or, it's very scary. So this is why we budget conservatively, is just in case something does happen, we do meet that downturn, we're prepared. And then the next slide is our general fund expenditures. As you can see, public safety is the largest. And then general government is the second. General government is the DA's office, the city manager's office, my office, treasurer's office, IT. It's all our support staff. And then this is the historical. Again, you can see that we're very consistent with how we're spending our money. The public safety, the light green, is actually consistently number 1, and general government, the darker green, is number 2. And then the next slide shows you the expenditures by category. So we are a service organization, and 75.7% of our expenses are salaries and benefits. Without people, we don't have services. So we're currently in negotiations with the CCA and the deputies. And it looks like in 22, we don't have anybody negotiating. Oh, we do. We have alternative sentencing in 22. And then we have fire and the fire chiefs in 23. And then the sheriff sergeants. So we do try to stagger those so we're not bargaining all 7 units in one year. This slide is general fund employees. It just shows you it shows you back to 2013. However, back in 2007, we had a total of 509 general fund employees and a total citywide of 634 employees. So in the general fund for 22, which this shows, we're still down from that 509. However, citywide, I think we're at 633. So we're only 1 under citywide. And the difference there is back in 2007, we only had 2 grant-funded employees. Now with the SAFER grant and all the firefighters we just added, and then all the health grants, we have 43 grant-funded employees. So that's the big difference there. All right, this is just a slide I like to show, showing the blue is the revenues, the red is expenses. We always want to have a difference there because the difference will go to our debt service, transfers to other funds, capital needs, and then if we want to increase fund balance. And then the next slide is pretty much what we just talked about with all of those graphs, just written down if you're not a graph person. So you can look at it 2 different ways. And this is the general fund in a numeric format, the numeric format that I like. But it does show the fiscal year 20 audited, the 21 estimated, so where I think we're going to land at the end of the year, and then the 22 tentative budget. So as you can see, we have it 8.42% at the end of 22 is what we're projecting. Our financial policies say we have to have at least 8.3% fund balance as a minimum. And the next slide is a 5-year projection of the general fund. It's our long-term analysis. We always do this to make sure whatever we're doing in 22, we can sustain over 5 years. And as you can see, that 8.42 fund balance, I'm hoping to grow to 10% in the next 5 years. Again, this is, when we went into the Great Recession, I believe we had a fund balance of 22%. And we still had to decrease salaries and cut a bunch out of our budgets. And so it's just to stave off the next downturn, so we can weather it, not cut services, instead of cut services. You'll see a big increase between 24 and 25 in expenses. We added 1.6 million for the operations of the new fire station that will potentially go online, and 1.7 in fiscal year 26. And we have a contingency there of 1.8 million. Again, there's the new variant out there, and I just don't know if we're out of this quite yet. So I'm just being cautious. Each year after that, it's $500,000. And then the supplemental request, that really has some money in there for the union negotiations, as well as 1.3 million for the supplemental requests that are coming up next. So you'll see that leaves CIP funding of 11,228,000 for fiscal year 22. And then fiscal years 23 to 26, capital funding is kind of where the difference goes. So I got up to 10% fund balance, whatever was remaining went into capital. This looks really good. When I first started, I think we had like $500,000 for capital. So we do budget very conservatively. So revenues, I've left 1-2% increases, where expenses, we've projected merits for everybody working right now with no termination savings. So chances are revenues will be low, or expenses will be lower, and revenues will probably be higher, leaving more capital funding for us in the future. That's the hope. So now I'll go through just a few of the funds. The Capital Projects Fund, we'll talk about this in detail when we go through capital projects. But I want you to know we did budget that $10,495 transfer from the general fund into capital projects. With some of the other funding in that fund, we have $11.4 million in capital that we're recommending. Right now, that is sitting in board designated for the tentative budget, and if approved today, we'll move it into the line items that are approved. There's the infrastructure fund. This is a 1/8 cent sales tax. This was originally approved to get the MAC, the animal shelter, and then various corridor improvements. So we just finished the South Carson Street corridor project, which I know you guys are very familiar with. I believe next is the Williams Street corridor. So that's where the money would go to in 21-22. Special revenue funds. This is revenue dedicated to a specific purpose. So the Quality of Life Fund was a voter-approved 25-cent sales tax. And so that sales tax has to be split up 20% to park maintenance, 40% for capital, and 40% for open space. So we track this accordingly and make sure they're spending their money as they promised they would in the voter approval. We'll go over the capital items here in detail a little later. It's a little different format than I show the rest of them just because of the breakout. The Regional Transportation Fund. We did have a meeting about this last night, and there are some tweaks that we're going to be working on for the final budget. But right now, this is what we've got in the tentative budget. I don't think there was anything overly significant. It looks like there's a 10% increase in salaries. That's really not true. There were some salary savings in 21. So the budget was actually higher, but there's some salary savings. So the salary is really not 10% higher. It's just the way it looks. We did increase or decrease this revenue by 10% because in fiscal year 20, the revenue went down 10%. And so far this year, what's been coming in is down about 10%. So we did decrease the revenue and then only increased it by 1% next year. Hopefully it's better. But, I like to be conservative. And then the really big numbers, obviously, in 21 are the South Carson Street project, the Tiger Grant, and the money the state gave us being spent on that project. Street Maintenance Fund. So this one, the revenue kind of offsets because they get sales taxes and they get gas taxes. So sales taxes were showing a 3.6% increase. The sales taxes are actually bigger dollar amounts, and the gas taxes are showing a 10% decrease. So the difference actually offset each other. So this one's going up just a little bit based on the sales taxes. And then we'll talk about the capital.
Can you go back on that?
Sure.
The estimated available for fiscal 21-22 is $5,084,000 versus $6,005,000. The overall is a loss of revenue in the street maintenance fund. Were you talking about a particular tax versus the overall fund?
No, I'm talking the overall fund, because the beginning fund balance that rolled forward from 20 to 21 was quite a bit higher. So there's really not a loss in revenue. It's just the available amount of money they didn't spend last year that came into this year that makes it look higher. But revenue.
But in reality, if you look at the actual year, we have less to spend in the street maintenance fund, which will be what we'll be tweaking a little bit for the final budget, and we'll discuss that in detail. Thank you.
The debt service fund is where we, all the other funds with restricted revenue transfer their money into debt service, and debt service pays the debt. You can see there's nothing too exciting going on here. We did do a refunding in 20 at the brick building, so we saved some money. But other than that, we're paying about $8.5 million in debt service out of this. We have the enterprise funds next. These are our funds that operate just like businesses. And the first three are the utility funds. We did take this to the UFOC on April 6th, and they approved the budgets as prepared. We did include increases in revenue for the rate increases. And there's not a whole lot going on in expenses. We'll talk about capital when we get to the capital plan. The next slide shows the financial policies. And I'm just going to go through real quickly. The operating reserve is based on the industry standard. This one happens to be 30 to 45 days minimum cash reserve for operating reserve. And then the capital reserve and the system reinvestment are really one number. There's just two different calculations for it. So the capital reserve is based on 2% of assets. And then the system reinvestment funding is based on depreciation. So whichever's bigger, that's the capital reserve that we use. And as you can see, we're meeting those reserves. The debt to income ratio is 50-50. Want to pay as you go was kind of the what we were trying to get to with the financial policies we set. And then the debt service coverage, we want at least 1 times coverage. This one we have 2.1. So we're meeting all our financial policies. The water utility fund, pretty much ditto what I just said on wastewater. We did include a rate increase, and we are meeting all of the financial policies. Stormwater, there's a little bit bigger jump in revenue, and that's again the rate change that's going to be implemented on July 1st. And there's a little bit of a bump in professional services, and that's an increase to professional services for $20,000. And then the ratepayer assistance program of $10,000 that we added. And they are also meeting all their financial policies. This one in 2013 was not originally set up with a rate increase, so it did not have the ability to meet the financial policies. But Public Works has been striving over the years, because it was booked in with the UFOC, to help make it meet those financial policies, and it does now. So things are going good in the utilities. The ambulance fund. This is just near and dear to my heart. The ambulance fund is doing really well. We used to have to subsidize the ambulance by $500,000 a year. But with the new Medicaid program from the state, we don't have to, which is great. It really helps the general fund out and capital. The internal service funds, there's only 2 funds I wanted to talk about, and just to inform the new board members that in the insurance fund, we keep about $1 million in there for a reserve. Basically, we have a deductible or a retention that we have to keep per incident of $100,000. So $1 million has always gotten us through the year and made sure that we're not, overspending this fund. Workers' compensation fund, we have a little bit bigger reserve, which is usually between $3 and $4 million. And that's because we're self-insured. We do have a high deductible or excess loss insurance policy. However, the retention in that for police and fire is $2 million, and for an employee is $750,000. So we're self-insured up to those limits. So that's why there's a bigger reserve in that fund. So the next steps is we'll go through our supplemental and capital. On May 20th, whatever is approved here, we'll add into the final budget and bring it before this board for adoption for the final budget. And then it is due to the Department of Taxation on June 1st.
Sherry, are you anticipating any legislative changes that would need to be incorporated? And are we any date extensions? Sometimes they let you file amended finals. So are we expecting anything so far legislatively that's going to change the picture here?
There is a possible change with China Springs. However, they're pushing hard to slowly incorporate that cost into our budgets. So I have not included additional costs yet because I don't know how big they're going to be. If they're going to just give us like a 10% increase for a few years until we hit what they want us to hit, or they're going to bump us all at once. My gut feeling, and from what I've heard from NACO, is that they're leaning towards slowly implementing it.
Okay, thank you. Can you take us through supplementals?
Yes. So supplementals, I have a brief discussion, and then if there's any questions, we can ask them. We have approximately 2.3 million in supplemental requests. They came to IFC, and IFC recommended 1.9 million come before the board today. Thank you. So this includes about $1.2, $1.3 million of general fund, and then $600,000 in other funds. So the way that we've broken it down this time, we decided to let you know what the board has already reviewed, NRS requirements, audit recommendations, those kind of things are item 53 through 58, 62 through 64, and 96 through 102. So I've added numbers down the side here. And so those items, they've either already come before the board, so you're aware of them. They were audit recommendations, or the NRS required the change.
Can you run those numbers by me again?
Yes, 53 through 58, 62 through 64, and 96 through 102. Welcome. There are some that were public safety and healthcare, and I included healthcare in there. And that was 4, 12, 25 through 29, 36 through 37, and 38 through 43. Basically, the public guardian needs an hourly person. They have a lot of cases compared to other jurisdictions. That's a healthcare public safety issue. DA's office, the position they're asking for is a criminal side, so that's a public safety. Do you need me to run through those numbers again? Okay, 4, 12, 25 through 29, 36 through 37, and 38 through 43. Oh, excuse me, 38 and 43. The workload needs, where there's just too much work and they're asking for additional assistance. That includes item 5, 11, 17 and 18, 23, 65 through 73, 84, and 99. And then there's also a category with offset items where management is reducing their budget or taking away a temporary employees to allow for a full-time person. And that's items 1 through 3, 19, 31, 47, 48, 85, and 92. There's a few promotions and increases in services, but those categories capture most of the changes. And I wanted to go through our process a little bit. So finance first receives all the supplemental requests in our department, and we go through each one and calculate and make sure that all the numbers are correct and make sense for the 22 budget. And then we set up the agenda and bring those items to IFC. And we have quite a long meeting where we kind of grill all the directors on exactly what they need and why they need it. And then IFC later meets after we've met with all the directors, and then we decide what we can move forward to this level to potentially get approved into the next budget. So we don't take lightly the fact that we're asking for quite a few positions. Unfortunately, we've grown as a city. We're doing a lot more. We're doing a lot more grants, a lot more. I mean, it's great. We're bringing in some money. We're doing a lot more. We're just. A lot of the departments just need help. Thank you.
Okay, I think what I'd like to do is I can ask each of us. So I would like item 37, which is the EMS manager. And I think we've had a request for item 4 on the park maintenance worker. So that's item 46 that you would, we may ask you to come up to comment on that. Is there anything else, any of you as a board member on the supplemental list that you would like to stay to specifically discuss? So right now I've got the EMS manager for line 37 and the park maintenance worker, line 48. Supervisor Jones, do you have another item you'd like pulled for discussion? 38? Item 38, okay. And item 38 is the reclass on the office, in the DA's office, correct? 38 and 48. Oh, in juvenile is, okay, so in juvenile probation, the mental health is item 38. So 37, 38, and 48 we both wanted. Okay. Anybody have Supervisor White? Is there one you want? Anything?
Thank you. 34 and 35.
34 and 35. Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, we'll dismiss the staff so they can go back and do all their good work.
I can give you some good news. The sheriff has decided instead of the 1 full-time employee for the call taker, he's looking for 2 part-time employees. So that'll save us on benefits. It goes from about $45,000 for the 2 part-time to what he's asked for in here, which is $67,000.
Which number is that?
That 31? Is 31, yes. Or
So
30.
that'll
Yeah.
be converted to 2 half-times, is that what you just said?
Yes.
2 1/2 times. Okay. I don't see anyone else with any raised hands, so we're gonna go in order then on the numbers. And the rest, I don't think we have any specific questions on. So we'll go to number 34, which is the wildland fuel. So it is in your package on page, I need my glasses, 68. So Sean, would you describe what's going on here, please?
Sure, thank you. Sean Slayman, Fire Chief for the record. So item number 34 is a request for some additional, or for some supplemental funding. We are a partner through what is called a SNPLMA grant, and Chief Giommi helped me with this. So it's Southern Nevada Public Lands. So, and even though it's Southern Nevada, we are also partake in that. And what it does is it funds several programs for us in the wildland urban interface area, meaning the areas that are threatened or perceived as threats for wildland fires. We have a seasonal fuels team that comes in and clears high threat areas in our public lands to reduce the threat of wildfire. And we have a wildland fuels management officer who a portion of his salary is paid through that oversees that program. And in addition to that, what this item is a dumpster program that we have provided to our citizens through this grant for several years. Unfortunately, through cost increases, through salaries and fuel increases, Public Works delivers the dumpsters to residences on the fire department takes the reservations and assigns the dates for the dumpsters to be delivered or the trailers, and then they are delivered. And what that does is the homeowner clears their property so that they create a wildland as a safe zone, basically proper clearances. And what that does, the benefit of that is that reduces the threat of a wildfire starting and significantly reduces wildfire spreading throughout our communities. And so it is a program that has traditionally been funded completely through the grants. However, there's a little shortage this year, and we're because of those costs, and we're anticipating those shortages ongoing. So we have funding through March this year. On another positive note, after supplementals were heard and received, and after this was put as an item, we received a $25,000 grant through the International Association of Fire Chiefs for our program, and it has been highlighted by them. Carson City's program has been highlighted by the IAFC for being very proactive in our preventative measures in the wildland urban interface. That grant, $25,000, will offset some of those costs that we've requested. However, we still feel there is going to be a shortage towards the end of each fiscal year through that funding. And that grant we received is a one-time grant. We will continue to apply for it, but it is a competitive grant.
Does anyone have a further question on them?
Yeah.
So it would seem to me then if the grant is not currently covering all of the cost and you have identified this current latest grant as one time only, if the grant can't cover the cost of the program, perhaps it's time to stop the program. And secondly, I'm a little concerned that with all the talk that our streets department is having trouble getting our streets taken care of, I understand this is probably fairly minimal. Why are we transferring this into streets? I'd really prefer our streets people to stay on the streets.
So I'll defer question or the second part to Sherry or to the city manager, because that was a recommendation from IFC.
Yeah, currently the streets crew are the ones that are delivering the dumpsters. And so they charge their time to this grant. And this grant reimburses us. So the idea is if that grant is gone, we would just give streets the money to help continue the program.
So it's a current practice that Public Works delivers so we're
dumpster
not
money.
changing
Correct.
the practice.
No.
This is just a funding mechanism for the practice.
Originally through the request, it was going to be a pass-through. It was going to fund the fire department budget and then go pass through to Public Works to pay for their drivers.
Thank you. Supervisor Giommi?
So you asked for 41,509. That didn't get recommended. Instead, what got recommended was 20,000, which is coming from the general fund?
Yes,
Okay, plus the 25 for the grant
right,
gets them 45 roughly,
correct.
which should be enough for the coming fiscal year based on what you asked for, correct, Chief?
Correct.
So then next year you could come back and ask for this amount again if you don't get that grant, and we could take it up
Sure.
then.
We
Okay.
could.
Yeah, I will just say this, for the very short amount of time that it takes, maybe an hour's worth of a driver's time, we have, what, 5 dumpsters? 4? You remember? We used to have 4. I don't know how many we have now.
I think we're at 5.
So, maybe 5 hours a week. It's removing tons and tons
Yes.
of hazardous fuel from this community. And I would not want to see this program stop.
Huge fire safety. Supervisor White?
Well, if you're going to talk about the amount of time it takes, I would suggest that an hour is not getting the job done. By the time staff gets it scheduled, dispatches a person over there to deliver the dumpster, go back, pick it up, take it to the dump, the time is substantially more than an hour.
Supervisor Shooty?
Just a question. So you had mentioned the $25,000 grant for this year. So that doesn't offset the request of $41,000?
So it came in after
Okay.
the grant was, or excuse me, after the supplemental request was made. So we recognize that. We've talked with finance, and we will draw down from that grant and only utilize whatever, if approved, whatever funding is needed to keep the program through the fiscal year.
So in essence, it would be, 17,000 approximately, so we could, okay.
Potentially, yes.
That's great. And I think this program is amazing. Again, with wildfire, it can be so destructive.
Yes.
And so I think this is that ounce of prevention.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to item 38, which is really hooked to item 43. So 38 and 43 are half general fund, half Medicaid funding. Oops. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Let's do
I'm more than happy
37.
to step down.
Nope. I needed a highlighter. I should have. We'll take 37 so we can finish with the fire department. Okay, thank you.
So what we are requesting is a pay classification or salary classification change for our existing medical director. This started, we started a comparable study late summer, early fall, and began looking at other agencies that have medical directors and what their job scope and job descriptions are, as well as their salary ranges. What we found is probably not a surprise, but we are very unique. In Carson City, we have several different EMS services that most fire departments or even private ambulances, for that matter, don't necessarily provide. We have a contract through Carson Tahoe for wheelchair delivery services, or a van that delivers patients to different satellite facilities within the Carson Tahoe network. Then we also have, that was implemented when I first came here, it was already in the progress. The startup program is a single role basic life support ambulance. And what that does is they are non-firefighters, so they significantly less cost. They run a BLS transport program. It started as a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 operation. It is now a 7-day-a-week, 12-hour-a-day operation with 4 employees on that. Then in addition to that, we have our advanced life support ambulances, which are fire-based EMS, what we call. They are firefighters and paramedics trained on the ambulances. And so our EMS manager oversees basically that entire operation. And as Sherry mentioned earlier, up until recently, and really off of the GEMT funding, we operated in the black. We were averaging about $500,000 a year, $400,000 a year in the red. on how our revenues versus our overall costs. With the Ground Emergency Medical Transport Program from Medicaid, we get funding that averages about $1.1 to $1.2 million a year to offset some of the costs for Medicaid transports. There's a flat fee normally provided, and then for public service ambulance companies, which we are a part of, they can get additional supplements depending on their costs to a certain level. That has allowed us to operate in the black. I'm getting my numbers or my colors mixed up here.
The
I'm going
positive or the
colorblind.
negative.
I'm going
Yeah.
colorblind. So she oversees that program. That there is a tremendous amount of staff and clerical work tied to that. There is no staff or clerical work under that position. So a majority of that is hers. She oversees 7 full-time positions, one which includes a lead for MedTrans, which that lead person essentially supervises our MedTrans employees, provides scheduling and such. Our EMS division is about a $4 million operation. She oversees that, so she would be somewhat of like a COO for that program. And then 90% of our call volume is medical-based. And so that is a significant, obviously, portion of what we do. So looking at other agencies, it is very common to find that as in a firefighter role as a battalion chief, a division chief, which is a rank above that, or a deputy chief, which is the position right below the fire chief, that normally operate EMS divisions. The closest we could get to on a civilian side is Reno Fire Department. They have a division chief, Chief Nolan, who did not come up through the firefighting ranks and was not a firefighter, and he oversees Reno's EMS division. They do not transport. Well, they have one ambulance for surge capacity for RIMSA, but essentially they don't transport. They have an ALS program that is just fire engine based. If you go to East Fork, which is just to the south of us, Douglas County, they are a similar EMS operation with fire-based ambulances. They have a deputy chief that oversees their operations. Granted, they do have other programs that they oversee. So looking at that salary classification, working with HR and working with the district attorney's office, our recommendation is that we move that classification to a management classification.
Do I have anyone with any questions? So I will tell you that the difficulty, and I think you just expressed it kind of well, is that the position is a little bit unique and it really doesn't have comparables necessarily across, because we're just operating it differently. When I then look at the city itself and the classification that you're requesting, I look at those positions and try and draw the proper parallels to what management level the position is, and I'm left with a little bit more difficult decision because I think we have others in the city employ that at that level supervise other supervisors and managers and major programs. And so I just struggle with making sure that our classification system itself is fair and equitable across all of our departments, because this is a particular range that is just not impacting the fire department. Where your fire classifications do only impact the fire department. And so I struggle slightly there. So tell me why you feel this is of such high importance in the managerial structure for you.
Sure. So the responsibilities of that position is numerous. As we talked about, 90% of our call volume operation is medically driven. It is a $4 million enterprise budget. That is a one-person marching band that oversees that. The next report to that is me. And so it is a critical position. Then you look at the different programs that we provide, and I keep talking about it being different. They are recognized as state of the art And we have numerous fire departments that are looking at programs similar to the way we are operating. And with that and the changes that have been made with our EMS director now, our EMS manager now, she is highly recruitable for other agencies. There's a pay disparity. That's what we're trying to narrow. But to get more back to your question, our licensure, our paramedics, they carry prescribed narcotics on all of our ambulances as well as all of our fire engines. That is a huge liability. Without proper oversight, without proper auditing, without proper measures to make sure that we are following protocols, and there are several other steps. That is a medical director that also oversees that program. Without the right person in that position and the responsibilities with that, we could easily find ourselves in trouble. And there are numerous ambulance companies and fire departments throughout the country that have run into serious issues related on inventory control through their prescription narcotic mission. The billing component, working with our contract agency for the billing and recovering, something that comes to you on a quarterly basis on our budget resets, on what we can't account for, overseeing that company and making sure that they are doing everything that they possibly can for cost recovery and for our costs is a significant time for that. Then in addition to that, they're responsible for training and making sure that we're all certified and qualified and continuing to follow protocols on a regular basis. From a management team perspective, that is a position I rely very heavily on. And as an example, for about a 9-month period, we did not have a deputy chief. So I had to assume the operations and support roles that the deputy chief normally runs. That EMS director essentially became my deputy chief and assisting on managing those. As an individual, I would say she is either my right hand or my left hand. The other one is right back there with our deputy chief. I would consider her in that position more at the deputy level, but I don't think we're anywhere near getting that from the discussions. I think this is as close to making it comparable to where we need to be.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Jones?
Well, I can't equate that equal to a battalion chief. There's no comparison, and I don't think you should draw that analogy. Obviously, it's a very important position, but that's a pretty high pay jump that you're proposing for the degree of responsibility. I am struggling with this. I'll be very honest with you.
Supervisor Giomi?
Well, having sat in Chief Slayman's seat, it is difficult for him to convey to people who aren't in the fire service the importance of what this position is doing. Maybe I'll take a stab at trying to help him do that, because I support him in what he's doing. I don't believe that this pay increase is putting her in line with battalion chief's pay or battalion chief's job. Carson City has had to find creative ways to deal with the increase in calls for service in this community going back to when I was there. And, we jumped into the wheelchair business on a competitive bid, by the way, to the hospital. We competed against private businesses and were able to create a wheelchair service that the hospital relies on. It also decreased our calls for service. So that really started the fire department down a unique path, one that not many departments are going down. And that's one where you're right-sizing the provision of EMS services to the community. So you're putting the right level of resource to the right need in the community, and you're not overstaffing with too many firefighter paramedics, for instance, or too many single role people. And that's one thing that I applaud Chief Slayman for doing, because if he weren't doing that, we'd be paying way more money in adding dual role positions for instances that don't require that. So really, this is a big effort to right size the pre-hospital care that the fire department provides. And it's really what it is. It's pre-hospital medical care. And having worked on the GEMT, which is the Ground Emergency Medical Transport, changes through state Medicaid, I can tell you that the work involved in obtaining that $1.2 million is voluminous. So quite honestly, we're talking about $12,000. And I think, given the conversation I've had with the chief and the knowledge I have of the fire department, I think we're getting a bargain for that $12,000. I think you could easily make an argument that the position could be higher than that. I think part of what has gotten us as a board a little upset is the legal action that has taken place by the association. And I don't think that we should hold that against the chief or this person. I think we need to separate those two things. And I'm supportive of this. I think it will benefit the department, and ultimately, I think it will benefit the program, which in turn benefits the people in this community.
I need a little clarification,
Mr. Jones?
Stacy. You said something about, are we competing with private enterprise?
No. We, at one point, we bid for the ambulance service at the hospital. The hospital sent out a request for proposals. They asked people to bid. The fire department bid, along with a company out of Las Vegas, taxi company, and a company out of Reno. And we, the fire department, got the bid. So we've been in a contract with the hospital since then.
Do you have any further questions on this? I don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will, again, item 38 and 43. I think the question on this one, Sherry, this is a recommendation to do 1/2 in general fund and 1/2 in Medicare, Medicaid dollars. What happens if they don't have sufficient billing in the Medicare or Medicaid arena to cover the half?
So they've been doing that Medicaid billing for 2 to 3 years now, and they have about a $300,000 buildup sitting there that they have not spent. So half of this position is less than they project earning in each year going forward. I think she said, and Allie's, hopefully she's on the line so she can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought she said that some years they only bring in $65,000. So even if they only brought that in, they'd still be able to cover this half of the position.
So I think what all of us are looking for is just to indicate that this one is billable at the 50% as long as the sufficient dollars are there. Otherwise, the general fund would back it up. I think that's what we're trying to make this not a grant funded. It has a billing source, but if it's not eligible as time goes on, we recognize it could become more of a percentage than 50% general fund, just in case something happens in the billing arena on this.
Okay.
Did I cover what you wanted, Supervisor Jones?
Well, no, I want to go on record. I'd like to see another counselor. I think juvenile can justify it. I really do. And I would like to see if in our final presentation, if we have the money for another counselor.
A third? Because they currently have a mental health professional already on staff. She did just resign, so they're hiring a new one, but that's a position that's already been approved. And so this would be a second mental health.
Well, what I'd really like to see is spend all the money that we have in Fund 2 and use the Medicare fund, if you can use it for labor, as maybe a part-time. That's what I'd really like.
I can pass that along to Ally, because that 300,000 just has to support programs. So within, the juvenile justice system, so.
Can you spend that for labor? That Medicare
Yes.
fund? You
Yes, it
can?
just has to support her programs, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Supervisor White?
Thank you. Honestly, I really don't like this method of funding where you're creating different tentacles dependent on one another, when for me, I would like to see this position absolutely stable, funded out of the general fund, and then bill back to Medicaid, rather than, and I understand what's going on the other direction, but for some reason, Medicaid has a malfunction, that money doesn't come in. I don't want to be in a position where now, maybe it's not much of a scramble, but there's a scramble to go find the money within the general fund somewhere to fund it. For me, it's far more preferable to simply fund the position and then bill back Medicaid to supplement whatever it needs to do based on however much billing they can figure out to do.
I think I understand where the board's going. The Medicaid money that we're getting billed back does go into the grant fund so that they can support other juvenile programs. So we're just asking them to use that money to help support this position, as opposed to 100% of it coming from the general fund.
I think we made it clear on the record that if there's insufficient billable money in that account, the position will remain. So I think that's what we're all after, is they're not going to be scrambling. So we are indicating it's a 101, a general fund position, but it will bill the grant fund 50% unless there isn't available dollars to do so. So I think we're all in agreement that we want a mental health position. I don't think that's.
I understand that as well, but again, that goes to, seems like so many things we do. We're all sitting here in this room happy and smiling at one another today, and 10 years from now, the story changes. And I understand it could even then. But I think it creates a higher bar to make that change. And I would prefer, in my mind, to do it a simpler way.
Simpler, but, okay. We're going to move on to, let's see, the next one of discussion. We wanted to look at item 48 in the parks. And I think our overall discussion there is we are reducing the temporary staffing. Is Ms. Budge on the line?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director.
So the general question here, can you tell us how we're doing or where you think it's going to go with inmate labor to help you with the overall park maintenance?
So inmate labor is a really big unknown right now. There was a bill at the legislature that has since died requesting to increase inmate wages. Currently, we have an agreement that just expired with the Department of Corrections, and we pay inmates $1.50 per hour per inmate. So approximately $36,000 a fiscal year for inmate labor, and that equates to 20 full-time equivalent staff. Right now, there is a second bill. I've been informed by the Department of Corrections. I'm trying to get some more information about that, also about inmate wages. But the overall consensus is to try to get inmates at what they call a livable wage, which would be minimum wage. If that happens, the city would likely no longer use inmate labor except for maybe projects and not as part of a regular staff person. Right now, in a typical year, not during COVID, we would utilize inmate labor for mowing, cleaning restrooms, emptying trash, really basic services that are critical to maintaining a safe and clean park system. In your proposal, we're requesting an additional park maintenance worker. It'd be one full-time equivalent, and the request is actually for $16,406. We have a diversified funding strategy where we would contribute $40,000 from the existing budget from our seasonal labor force. And we are really struggling obtaining and keeping seasonal staff. We pay well above the minimum wage. We pay $12 to $18 per hour for our seasonal labor force, and we just cannot get them. Right now, people are getting more on unemployment than they are making for seasonal work. So there's no labor force available. We've had much better luck of obtaining and keeping full-time staff that have benefits.
So part of our thought process here is as you work through, again, whatever the legislature is going to end up doing for us, that we recognize you may need to come back to ask for some contract money through Marathon or other avenues. So just to open that up to you, to let you know, we do have a little bit of contingency money, in the budget. We recognize that this might not be your final answer. And so just wanted you to know we recognize that. And I think everyone here is looking for ways to keep our parks usable. And like you said,
We
with proper
appreciate that.
mowing. Okay, it did that.
Yep, thank you so much.
Supervisor Giomi?
Yeah, on this topic, I want to say that I fully support this and I support, really doing what we need to do to keep our parks usable and clean. I can't think of a resource beyond the health department and maybe public safety that was more brought to the forefront during this pandemic than our parks and open space. And I think it really emphasized to this community how lucky we are to have what we have. And I for one would say, we need to help the Parks Department, whether it's with contract labor or an increase in funds to pay for more inmates. But, there are things in those parks that that need to be done to make them usable for our people. And I'm not saying she has a blank check, but I am saying
could
that
bring another item
that I
back.
don't have an issue spending a little more money on our parks, because it is one of those departments that really got decimated in 08, 9, 10, 11. And I don't know that things have built back up the way they should have. I'm not advocating necessarily a bunch of more people, but there are a lot of businesses out there that do contract work, and I think they can efficiently get in there and help out in the case that the inmate labor doesn't pan out. So I just wanted to emphasize what you said, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Schutte?
Well, I fully support this position as well. And, even thinking about public comment this morning, and I know it's a different question, a different funding source, all of that, but our parks really are kind of the soul of this community for many people. And during COVID, when so many folks just needed that fresh air and they needed to get out of their homes and yet be safe and experience some joy, the park provided that. And this is a big part of our community, and I think any way we can help, if we have the ability, we need to.
Supervisor Jones?
Well, I appreciate both Supervisor Giomi and Schutte's comments. And I don't know, it's not if we need contract maintenance, it's we need it. You might as well budget for it now if you're not going to give them the employees.
The issue is we don't know which way and how much until that's why we said they're going to bring an item back. Because we just have to have some information from the legislature and the inmate, whether it's $1.50 an hour or $10. Anyway, big difference. Yes.
I think Jennifer said, and I was told yesterday, that bill didn't pass that one to pay minimum wage, right? The one in the legislature, didn't it? It didn't come out of committee.
Yeah, so SB 407 is now dead, but I'm hearing from the Department of Corrections that there's another bill, and I'm not sure if it's been introduced or not.
All right.
But I am following up with them. And then I did want to let the board know that our current budget for inmates, the 36,000, we are contracting out that labor to help us with our mowing and our tasks that the inmates normally do. Obviously, that money does not go as far, but we have, we're waiting on quotes right now for contract work to help assist us because we know we will not have inmate labor regardless the rest of this fiscal year and possibly the entire calendar year just because of COVID, regardless of the legislature.
So maybe, again, staff can work together between now and the final budget to look at the contract labor. And if you can have some good numbers, bring them with the final budget to us. Is that, yes, everybody? Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then from last evening, we had the Regional Transportation Commission meeting, and we had 3 recommendations come forward through that I'd like this board to consider for adjustment. One of those dealt with, we have the transit fund that we generally transfer money from the general fund as a match for some grants, but with all of the COVID pandemic, American Recovery, whatever fancy name for all of those, we have an opportunity to not transfer around $466,000 for the transit fund. We also then have an opportunity in our streets maintenance account. We really felt there was a shortfall for our contractual needs for the short line work, for our sidewalks, painting and crosswalks, not sidewalks, crosswalks. So we wanted to move approximately $400,000 into our short line contract. We found that opportunity. And then we also have in the Regional Transportation Commission Fund, we are working in Transportation District 3, and we had 2 projects that we were not able to fund to the capacity that was requested. And so we were doing a famous value engineering to try and make it work for the dollars. And the RTC Commission felt that we should fund the $753,000 to meet that need. And so we'd like to, and we did speak with the Chief Financial Officer, and we think we can accommodate those fixes in the Transit Fund, RTC Fund, and Street Fund. Did I cover that right, Lisa? Yeah, got it. Okay. So does anyone have a question? So I wish we could do more in the streets. It's certainly a priority, but I feel like at least they are identified projects that we're trying to do them not so piecemeal, and that we do them well if we're going to do one. So, and then let me see. Anybody have any other general questions or changes or things they want in the budget? No? Okay. Then we're going to have to try to see if we can make a motion here. So 1, we know that the sheriff is reducing his to 2 part-time. That was one change. The second is to not transfer the transit fund, to add $753,000 to the RTC account, to add approximately, and you can finite these numbers with staff, approximately $400,000 to the short line in the street account. Then we had work with the Parks Department to determine the contract need to get through. Parks, hold on, let's see what else. And then we can decide. I think the rest, I'll tell you what, I'm willing to let the EMS manager stand as requested. Is that okay with everyone? I know that we're not all necessarily, I'm going to just put it on the record. I want to support the chief. It's his department. I'm not convinced that it's potentially fair to some other employees in the city, so, but I want to support you. Do I have General, Mr. White?
It's not worth killing the budget over.
There you go. That's what I said. We're going to let that go. Okay. Then the other discussion point, and it could be just wording, but again, I want to leave, unless you all disagree, but the mental health professional, I want to leave it as is, with the record reflecting that the position is not contingent on Medicaid funding. It doesn't have to have it. So I agree with everyone here that we're putting on the record, if the dollars aren't there, they're not there. And also that you'll work with the juvenile probation chief to determine if any further halftime mental health or professional is needed. Did I I got it up? That was the motion. Third. Did we do it? Okay. So whatever, I move to approve, okay. I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of the fiscal year 2022 budgets for the regional transportation, transit, campo, and street maintenance funds as articulated changes I read into the record. And Supervisor Giomi was the second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. Whew. You have a little bit of work more to do to come back
okay.
for the final, but I think we did good work today.
Absolutely.
It is 12:25, and I know that one would think we could go to Capitol, but I think we really need to take a recess. So we will be back at 1:30. Thank you all for your good work.